The room is quiet, a deep and heavy stillness that marks the middle of the night. Yet within your mind, a storm is raging. The world outside is asleep, but you are completely, painfully awake. Old films begin to play on the screen of your memory, uninvited. Conversations from years ago, words that were said, and words you wish you had said, echo in the silence. Moments of regret, flashes of shame, the lingering ache of a loss you thought you had buried. The darkness of the room is a gentle blanket, but it offers no comfort from the shadows that live within. This experience, this midnight trial of the soul, is not a sign of personal weakness. It is a profound and shared human condition, amplified by the world we inhabit. We are taught how to build careers, how to accumulate possessions, how to present a face of success to the world, but we are rarely taught how to simply sit with our own pain. We are not shown how to navigate the complex inner world of our own heart. And so, the anxiety, the stress, the persistent feeling of being stuck often has its roots in something deeper. It grows from the soil of old wounds, the hurts and disappointments that we were told to move on from, to forget, to push down, but they do not disappear. They become invisible anchors, tethering our present moment to the storms of the past, keeping us from sailing freely into the calm waters of the now. But what if there was another way? A path that does not involve fighting this storm, nor trying to outrun it. What if the path to peace was not one of resistance, but of gentle, radical acceptance? There is an ancient way, a quiet invitation offered for centuries by the wisdom of Buddhism, and particularly by the clear, direct insight of Zen. It is an invitation to stop, to breathe, and to learn, perhaps for the first time, how to turn towards your own suffering, not with fear, but with a courageous tenderness. It is a path of learning how to hold your own wounds, as a loving mother would hold a crying child. The journey we are about to embark upon is not about erasing the past, for the past has forged the person you are today. It is about transforming your relationship to it. It is about finding peace, not in the absence of your story, but right in the middle of it. It is about discovering that the capacity for healing, for profound peace, is not something you need to find outside of yourself, but a treasure that has been waiting patiently within you all along. It is about learning, finally, how to let go of the struggle and simply rest safely and deeply in the warm embrace of compassion. Let us begin this gentle inquiry, not with force, but with a soft and open curiosity. We speak of these invisible anchors, these tethers to the past, but what are they, truly? For you, a wound is not always a gaping chasm left by a great earthquake of loss, although it can be. It is not always the sharp, defining trauma that splits a life into a clear before and after. More often, the most persistent wounds are quieter, more subtle. They are the slow erosion of the spirit caused by a constant, dripping tap of criticism in childhood. They are the quiet chill of emotional neglect, the feeling of being in a crowded room or even a home full of people and feeling utterly alone. A wound can be a promise that was whispered with all the sincerity in the world and then broken in silence, leaving behind a space in your heart that learned not to trust. It can be the shame of a failure you were never allowed to recover from, a mistake that came to define you in the eyes of others and eventually in your own. These experiences are like grains of sand. Individually, they seem weightless, insignificant. A single harsh word, a single dismissive gesture, a single moment of being misunderstood. But over the years, these grains of sand accumulate. They build and build, until one day you find that you are carrying the weight of a desert within you. This is the nature of the invisible wound. It rarely announces itself with a roar. It lives in the subtext of your life, in the quiet hum of things left unsaid and feelings left unfelt. And because it is unseen, we pretend it is not there. We build our lives on top of it, hoping the foundations will hold. But the wound has its own language. It has its own ways of making its presence known. It speaks to us through the very patterns of our lives. Consider the sudden flash of rage that rises in you during a minor inconvenience, perhaps in traffic or in a slow-moving line. You might believe your anger is about the other driver or the inefficiency of the store. But if you were to pause and to listen with a deeper ear, you might hear the echo of a much older story. You might feel the ghost of a time when you were truly powerless, when your boundaries were crossed, when you were not allowed to have a voice. The anger you feel now is the deferred cry of a younger self that could not speak up then. Consider the vague, persistent anxiety that hums beneath the surface of your days, a quiet static that colors everything you do. You might attribute it to work, stress, or financial worries. And while those are real, this deeper hum could be the resonance of an old instability, a time in your life when the ground beneath your feet felt profoundly unsteady, when you learned that safety was conditional and could be taken away at any moment. The anxiety of today is the old fear, still scanning the horizon for a danger that has long since passed. This language is most fluent in our relationships. Do you find yourself in a recurring pattern, attracting the same kind of partner who ultimately makes you feel the same way you felt long ago? Do you find yourself pushing away genuine love and affection when it comes too close, building a wall just when intimacy becomes possible? This is not a conscious choice. It is a script, written in invisible ink upon your heart by a younger version of you. It is a protection mechanism, a strategy that a child or a wounded adolescent devised to ensure they would never be that vulnerable, that hurt, ever again. These patterns, these seemingly irrational emotions and reactions, are not signs that you are broken. They are not character flaws. They are the language of the wound, crying out to be heard. They are signposts, pointing directly back to the place where the healing needs to begin. Think of a soldier who returns home from a distant, brutal war. On the surface, he is whole. His physical injuries have been mended. The scars on his skin have faded. His uniform is cleaned and put away in the back of a closet. His family welcomes him with tears and celebration. He has, by all external measures, returned to safety. But in the dead of night, when the house is still, the war continues inside him. A car, backfiring on the street, sends him diving for cover. The innocent laughter of his children can sound, for a fleeting moment, like something else entirely. He feels a chasm between himself and the people he loves most, a pane of glass he cannot seem to break through. He is present in body, but his spirit is still trapped on a battlefield miles and years away. He might search his own skin for a scar, a mark, a physical reason to explain the turmoil he feels inside, but he finds none. His journey towards peace does not begin with a doctor or a medicine. It begins with the profound and painful realization that the wound was not in his flesh, but in his memory. The wound was not a place on his body, but a moment in time that had become frozen within him, playing on a perpetual loop. His invisible wound dictates his present reality, and here lies the danger of ignoring these anchors. We live in a culture that encourages us to be strong, to move on, to get over it. We are taught to suppress these difficult feelings, to push them down into the dark basement of the mind. But suppressing a feeling is like trying to hold a large, inflated beach ball underwater. It takes an immense and constant expenditure of energy. You can do it for a while, but it is exhausting. Your arms grow tired, your focus wavers, and the moment you are distracted, the moment your strength gives out, the ball erupts to the surface with a surprising and often uncontrolled force. This is why a small frustration can trigger an outpouring of rage, or a minor disappointment can lead to a spiral of despair. The emotion is not proportional to the current event, because it is not from the current event. It is the release of years of suppressed pressure. This constant suppression drains our life force. The energy we spend holding down the past is precious energy we cannot use to create, to love, to learn, and to live fully in the present moment. It makes us tired, irritable, and numb. When we refuse to feel our sadness, we also dull our capacity for joy. When we refuse to acknowledge our anger, we also weaken our ability to set healthy boundaries. These unacknowledged wounds do not simply lie dormant. In the dark of the subconscious, they fester. They influence our choices, color our perceptions, and whisper doubts and fears into our ear, all without our conscious permission. They become the unseen filter through which we experience the world, a filter that often distorts reality, making us see threats where there is kindness and rejection where there is only neutrality. And so, we arrive at the beginning, the very first step on this path of healing. The first act of true, quiet courage is not to fix, or to solve, or to analyze, or to erase. It is much simpler and much more profound than that. It is simply to acknowledge. It is the willingness to turn your gentle gaze inward and to whisper, perhaps only to yourself in the quiet of the night, yes, there is a hurt here. Yes, something is aching. Yes, I am carrying something heavy. That is all. There is no need to immediately understand its origin, no need to have a plan to get rid of it. The first step is just to grant it existence, to allow it to be. This is not an admission of failure or weakness. It is, in fact, an act of profound self-respect. It is treating yourself as a worthy subject of your own compassionate attention. It is ending the internal war. For so long, you may have been fighting against these feelings, judging them, shaming yourself for having them. The act of acknowledgement is a laying down of arms. It is a truce. You are creating a small clearing in the dense, tangled forest of your mind. You are allowing a little bit of light to come in, allowing the wound, for the very first time, to simply breathe, without being judged for its existence. This is the sacred ground upon which all true healing is built. It is the brave and tender act of naming your invisible anchor. Now that we have gathered the courage to simply look, to acknowledge that this anchor exists, we must then ask the next question. Why does our mind seem to cling to it so tightly? Why does the mind itself so often feel like a stormy sea, constantly churning the waters and preventing us from seeing the quiet depths beneath? Understanding this is the next step in our journey to letting it go. Having gathered the courage to acknowledge that an anchor exists, we must now turn our gentle attention to the force that holds it in place. Why does our mind cling so tightly to these old wounds? Why does it so often feel like a stormy sea, endlessly churning up the mud from the bottom, obscuring any chance of clarity or peace? The truth is, you are not alone in this experience. The restless, agitated quality of the mind is so central to the human condition that ancient Buddhist teachers, thousands of years ago, gave it a wonderfully accurate and memorable name. They called it monkey mind. Imagine a monkey living in a vast jungle with millions of branches. Now imagine this monkey is drunk on fermented fruit, and as if that weren't enough, it has just been stung by a scorpion. Think of the state of that monkey. It would shriek and screech, leaping frantically and without purpose from one branch to another. It would swing from a branch of the past to a branch of the future, to a branch of pure fantasy, never resting, never still, for more than a single moment. This, the Master said, is the nature of the untrained human mind. It leaps from a memory of something someone said to you last week, to a worry about a bill that is due next month. It swings to a fantasy about a future vacation, then drops into a pit of self-criticism about something you did 10 years ago. It judges the present moment as boring, then immediately craves a different one. This ceaseless, chaotic movement is the source of our inner exhaustion. And it is crucial to understand this is not your fault. It is not a personal failing or a sign of some unique defect. It is simply the default nature of the mind to move, just as it is the nature of the heart to beat. But the monkey mind does not leap randomly. It has its favorite branches, its preferred pathways, and one of its strongest preferences is for negativity. Modern psychology has confirmed what Buddhist practitioners have observed for centuries. The mind has a powerful negativity bias. You can think of it this way. Your mind is like Velcro for negative experiences and like Teflon for positive ones. You can receive 10 compliments and 1 criticism in a single day, and which one will you be thinking about as you try to fall asleep? The criticism, of course, it sticks. The compliments, the moments of joy, the simple pleasures, they tend to slide right off. This, too, is not a flaw, but an ancient survival mechanism. For our ancestors living in a dangerous world, it was far more important to remember the location of the predator than the location of the pretty flower. Being hyper-aware of threats, remembering past dangers, and worrying about future risks was a feature, not a bug. It kept them alive. But in our modern world, where physical survival is less of a moment-to-moment concern, this same mechanism has become a source of chronic, low-grade suffering. The mechanism designed to keep us safe from tigers now keeps us endlessly ruminating on a critical comment from a colleague or a disapproving look from a stranger. And this is why the monkey mind loves to revisit the branches of our old wounds, to the ancient, survival-oriented part of our brain. An unresolved wound is an unresolved threat, so the mind returns to the scene of the crime again and again, not with the intention to heal it, but with the instinct to reassess the danger, to relive the threat, to try and figure out how to prevent it from ever happening again. The tragedy is that this constant reliving does not lead to a solution. It only deepens the grooves of the old pain, reinforcing the neural pathways of that suffering until it becomes a familiar, almost comfortable place for the mind to go. There is a beautiful Zen story that illustrates the dilemma and the solution. A young, earnest disciple, deeply frustrated by his own chaotic mind, went to his master. He bowed and said, "Master, my mind will not be quiet. It is filled with thoughts, with worries and memories. I try to force them out. I try to wrestle them into submission. But the more I fight, the wilder they become. What can I do to make my mind calm and clear?" The master listened patiently. He did not offer a complex philosophical answer. Instead, he bent down and scooped up a glass of water from a muddy puddle beside the path. The water was completely opaque, a swirl of brown dirt and sediment. He held it up to the disciple and asked, "How can you make this water clear?" The young monk, eager to prove his intelligence, began to list possibilities. "Well, master, I could try to find a piece of cloth and filter the water. Or perhaps I could carefully try to scoop the mud out from the bottom. Or maybe I should just throw this water away and find a clean stream." The master shook his head gently at each suggestion. Then he simply placed the glass of muddy water on a flat rock beside them. "We do nothing," he said. "We wait." They sat together in silence, watching the glass. For a long time, nothing seemed to happen. But slowly, imperceptibly at first, the heaviest particles of mud began to drift downwards, and then the smaller particles followed. After a period of quiet sitting, all the mud had settled on the bottom, leaving the water at the top perfectly clear. The master then looked at his student. "Your mind is just like this water," he said. "When it is agitated, when you struggle with it and try to force it into clarity, you only stir up more mud. The path to inner peace is not through struggle. It is through allowing things to settle on their own. You don't have to fight your thoughts. You just have to stop stirring them up." This story reveals the central misunderstanding that keeps us trapped. The greatest source of our suffering, the very thing that turns the monkey mind from a simple nuisance into a source of profound anguish, is a fundamental case of mistaken identity. We believe that we are the muddy water. We believe that we are the frantic, chattering monkey. When a sad thought appears in the mind, we do not see it as a passing cloud. We grasp onto it and declare, "I am sad." When a wave of anger washes through us, we do not see it as a temporary energy. We fuse with it and say, "I am an angry person." When a memory of a past failure surfaces, we identify with it completely, and the story becomes, "I am a failure." This act of identification is like chaining ourselves to every passing phenomenon. We give each thought, each feeling, each sensation the power to define our entire being. We fuse with the storm, and so we are tossed and turned by its every gust of wind and its every drop of rain. But the great liberation, the central insight of this path, is the realization that you are not the storm. You are not the clouds, nor the wind, nor the lightning. You are the sky. Think about this. The sky is vast, open, and spacious. The sky allows everything to happen within it. It holds the fluffiest white clouds of a summer day, and it holds the darkest, most violent storm clouds. The fiercest winds blow through it. The heaviest rains fall from it. But the storm is not the sky. The weather is what happens in the sky. The storm always passes, and the sky remains, untouched, unchanged, luminous and pure in its essential nature. This is a direct metaphor for your own consciousness. Your true nature is not the thought, not the emotion, not the sensation. Your true nature is the vast, open, aware space in which all of these things arise and pass away. Thoughts of sadness are weather, feelings of anger are weather, memories of old wounds are weather. They are temporary events passing through the vast sky of your awareness. The entire practice of mindfulness and meditation is a training in shifting this identification. It is the process of learning to unchain yourself from the passing weather and to rest in your vast, unchanging, sky-like nature. It is learning to become the silent, compassionate witness to the drama of your own mind, rather than the lead actor who believes the drama is real. When you can watch a painful thought arise without believing you are that thought, it loses its power over you. It becomes just a cloud drifting by. This realization, this shift from being the storm to being the sky, is the very heart of freedom. But to fully appreciate the limitless nature of the sky, we must first have the courage to understand the nature of the storm itself. This is precisely what the Buddha did. He did not practice spiritual bypassing or turn away from the reality of the mind's restlessness and the pain it can cause. Instead, he looked directly into it with unflinching honesty, and his first great teaching, the foundation upon which all other forms of healing are built, was a simple, direct, and profound acknowledgement of this universal human experience. It is the truth of what he called dukkha. The word the Buddha used to describe the storm of the mind and the fundamental nature of our experience was dukkha. And this single, ancient Pali word is perhaps one of the most profoundly misunderstood concepts in all of Eastern philosophy. It is most often translated into English simply as suffering. And when we hear the word suffering, our minds immediately conjure images of great tragedy, of famine, war, disease, and devastating loss. Because of this translation, many have come to view the core teaching of Buddhism as pessimistic, a dark and gloomy assessment of life that denies its joy and its beauty. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of the depth and subtlety of this first noble truth. To grasp the meaning of dukkha is not to become a pessimist, it is to become a realist, and it is the first essential step toward true and lasting freedom. Dukkha is not just the overt suffering of a great wound, it is also the subtle, pervasive background hum of unsatisfactoriness that runs through our lives. Think of it like a shoe that is just a little bit too tight. It doesn't cripple you, but you are always aware of a slight, persistent discomfort. Or imagine a beautiful, spinning wheel that is just slightly off-center on its axle. As it turns, there is a constant, subtle wobble, a vibration that prevents it from ever being truly smooth and stable. This wobble, this background hum of things being not quite right, is a much more accurate translation of dukkha. It is the feeling that something is always missing. It is the voice in the back of the mind that says, if only I could achieve this, or acquire that, or change this one thing about myself or my life, then I would finally be at peace. It is the inherent instability of a life built upon conditions that are, by their very nature, constantly changing. The ancient texts describe three distinct layers of dukkha. The first is the most obvious one, dukkha. This is the suffering of pain. It is the pain of the body when it gets sick, when it grows old, when it is injured. It is the emotional pain of losing someone you love, the pain of rejection, the pain of not getting what you want. This is the overt suffering that we all know and recognize. The second layer is called viparinama dukkha. This is the suffering of change. This is a subtler, yet more pervasive pain. It is the anxiety that comes from knowing that even our happiest moments must come to an end. It is the sadness we feel when a beautiful vacation is over. It is the clinging to a pleasant experience, and the inevitable disappointment when it slips through our fingers. It is the suffering inherent in pleasure itself, because deep down, we know it is impermanent. Even when things are good, the subtle fear that they will change is a form of dukkha. The third and most profound layer is called sankhara dukkha. This is the suffering of conditioned existence itself. It is the deep, underlying unsatisfactoriness of being a separate, vulnerable self in a world of constant flux. It is the background stress that comes from the ceaseless activity of the monkey mind, the constant effort of maintaining an identity, of protecting and defending a me that is ultimately an illusion. It is the deep exhaustion that comes from living in a world that never quite lives up to our expectations for it. It is this third layer of dukkha that is the true invisible anchor, the source of our deepest restlessness. To speak of these things, to acknowledge them, is not a morbid or negative act. Imagine going to a wise and compassionate doctor because you have a persistent, painful illness. A good doctor does not pat you on the back and say, "Oh, everything is fine, just think positive thoughts and it will go away." That would be irresponsible. A good doctor looks carefully, listens deeply, perhaps runs some tests, and then sits with you and gives a clear and honest diagnosis. They might say, "Yes, there is an illness here. This is its name. This is how it functions." That diagnosis is not the end of the story. The diagnosis is the necessary and compassionate beginning of the cure. Without the diagnosis, any treatment would be just guesswork. The first noble truth, the acknowledgement of dukkha, is the Buddha's profound diagnosis of the human condition. It is a moment of immense relief. It is the universe giving you permission to stop pretending that everything is fine when it doesn't feel fine. It is the comforting realization that this feeling of unease is not your personal failure. It is a shared, universal experience. To clarify this further, the Buddha used a simple, powerful parable. He said that in life, we will all, inevitably, be struck by an arrow. This first arrow represents the unavoidable pains of human existence. It is getting sick. It is growing old. It is the loss of a loved one. It is a painful rejection, an unexpected failure, a moment of betrayal. No one, no matter how wise or wealthy or virtuous, can go through life without being struck by these first arrows. They are a natural and inescapable part of the journey. This first arrow is painful, but it is not, in itself, the greatest part of our suffering. The real suffering, the Buddha taught, comes when we, ourselves, immediately shoot a second arrow directly into the same wound. What is this second arrow? The second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the arrow of our mental commentary. It is the thought, why me? This is so unfair. It is the arrow of blame, lashing out at whoever we think is responsible. It is the arrow of self-pity, drowning in the story of our own misfortune. It is the arrow of resistance, the desperate cry of, this shouldn't be happening. The first arrow causes pain. The second arrow causes suffering. The wound from the first arrow might be a clean cut, but the second arrow brings poison, infection, and inflammation. It is our own resistance, our own rumination, our own storytelling that takes a simple, clean pain and turns it into a chronic, agonizing wound. Here we see the crucial distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is the first arrow. It is the direct, unfiltered, physical or emotional experience of life's difficulties. It is a natural signal. Suffering is the second arrow. It is the complex web of thoughts, emotions, and narratives that we weave around the initial pain. Pain is an event. Suffering is a story. The work of healing our old wounds is not about becoming some kind of superhuman who is immune to the first arrow. That is impossible. The work is to become so mindful, so present, and so compassionate with ourselves that when the first arrow strikes, we have the wisdom and the skill to not automatically shoot the second. It is about learning to tend to the initial wound with kindness, rather than stabbing at it with our own judgments and fears. When we finally understand and accept the reality of dukkha, we can begin the liberating process of laying down our arms. So much of our life's precious energy is spent fighting a war that we can never win, the war against reality. We argue with what is. We spend our days wishing yesterday had been different. We torment ourselves with demands for how tomorrow must be. We are in a constant, exhausting wrestling match with the present moment. This acceptance of dukkha is not passive resignation. It is not giving up in defeat. It is a wise, powerful, and strategic alignment with the truth. A foolish sailor curses the wind when it blows against him. A wise sailor does not argue with the wind. She accepts its direction and its power, and she skillfully adjusts her sails to use that very wind to guide her ship to its destination. Accepting the reality of dukkha allows us to stop wasting our energy shooting and reacting to the second arrow. It allows us to conserve that precious energy and use it for healing, for wisdom, for connection, and for compassion. It allows us to ask a much more skillful and productive question. Instead of being trapped in the useless cycle of, why is this happening to me? We can begin to ask, with genuine, open curiosity, this is happening. This is the reality of this moment. Given that this is happening, what is the wisest and most compassionate way I can respond? This honest, courageous, and compassionate acknowledgement of dukkha, in all its forms, is the first noble truth. It is the diagnosis, and like any good diagnosis, it immediately and logically leads to the next essential question: what is the cause? If this dukkha, this dissatisfaction and suffering, is a fundamental part of our experience, where does it come from? What is the root cause of our compulsion to shoot that second arrow? The Buddha's clear and direct answer to this question forms the second noble truth, and it points us directly toward the inner mechanism of our own captivity, the engine that drives the storm of the mind, the powerful force of craving, clinging, and aversion. Having looked with courage at the diagnosis, the first noble truth of dukkha, we arrive at the physician's next essential question: what is the cause? If this pervasive sense of dissatisfaction, this susceptibility to suffering, is a fundamental part of our experience. Where does it come from? What is the engine that drives the restless monkey mind? What is the force that compels us to pick up and fire that painful second arrow into ourselves? The Buddha's answer to this question is revolutionary in its simplicity and profound in its implications. It is the second noble truth. He taught that the origin, the samudaya, of our suffering is a powerful, deep-seated force he called tanha. This ancient Pali word, tanha, is often translated as craving or desire, but its meaning is closer to thirst. It's not a gentle wanting, but a deep, compulsive, and often unconscious thirst. It is the perpetual itch in the heart that can never, ever be fully scratched. It is the feeling of leaning forward into the future, always seeking something outside of ourselves to make us feel whole and complete inside. This thirst, this tanha, is the very fuel for the second arrow. It is the root cause of our self-inflicted suffering, and it manifests in our lives in three primary ways. The first, and most obvious, is the thirst for sense pleasures, known as kama tanha. This is the endless craving for pleasant sights, pleasant sounds, delicious tastes, fragrant smells, and comfortable physical sensations. Our entire modern consumer culture is a massive engine designed to fuel this specific thirst. It whispers to us from every screen, every billboard, telling us that happiness is just one purchase away. If you get that new phone, that faster car, that more beautiful home, that perfect vacation, then you will be satisfied. It promises that the next delicious meal, the next exciting movie, the next like on your social media post will finally quench the thirst. But we all know from our own direct experience that it never does. The pleasure comes, it is enjoyed, and then it fades. And as soon as it fades, the thirst returns, often stronger than before, seeking its next temporary fix. It is a treadmill of wanting, a cycle that offers no lasting peace. The second form of this thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is called bhavatana, the thirst for existence, or the thirst for becoming. This is not just the craving for a specific pleasure, but the craving for life itself to be a certain, fixed way. It is the desperate thirst for our happy moments to last forever. It is the deep-seated desire for our health, our youth, and our vitality to be permanent. It is the clinging to our loved ones, the silent, fearful demand that they never change or leave us. This thirst for existence also manifests as the powerful drive to become something more. We crave to become more successful, more respected, more intelligent, more attractive, or even more spiritual. We create an idealized image of a future self, and we live in a state of constant striving towards it, always feeling that our present self is not good enough. This is the fundamental argument with reality, the deep resistance to the universal law of impermanence, the truth that everything, without exception, is in a constant state of flux. The third form of thirst is the direct opposite of the second, yet it is born from the same root of dissatisfaction. It is vibhavatanha, the thirst for non-existence, or the thirst for annihilation. This is the powerful aversion to, and the desperate desire to get rid of, unpleasant experiences. When physical or emotional pain arises, this is the voice within us that screams, "I can't stand this, make it stop." It is the thirst to annihilate our anxiety, to obliterate our shame, to erase a painful memory. It is the violent pushing away of our own present moment reality. While the thirst for becoming clings to what is pleasant, the thirst for non-existence tries to destroy what is unpleasant. Both are forms of struggle, two sides of the same coin of resistance. And it is this third thirst, this deep aversion, that is most directly responsible for keeping our old wounds infected and unhealed. When a memory of an old hurt arises, the first arrow strikes, the pain is felt, Immediately, the thirst for non-existence, vibhavatana, kicks in. We try to push the memory away, to distract ourselves, to numb the feeling. This very act of pushing away is what gives the memory its power. It is a declaration of war on our own inner world. At the same time, the thirst for becoming, bhavatanha, might cause us to cling tightly to a particular story about ourselves. We might, for example, cling to the identity of the victim or the survivor. This identity, while forged in pain, can become so familiar that it feels safe. To let go of the pain would mean letting go of a core part of who we believe we are, which can feel like a terrifying form of self-annihilation. We cling to the story because without it, we fear we might not know who we are. This clinging, this aversion, this constant thirst for reality to be other than it is the very essence of the second arrow. The Buddha used a stark and unforgettable image to explain this process. He asked his followers, imagine you are walking through a forest after a fire, and you carelessly reach down and pick up what you think is a piece of wood, but it is a burning hot coal. What would you do? The answer is simple and obvious. You would drop it. You would drop it instantly and without a moment's hesitation. You would not stand there holding the burning coal, analyzing its chemical composition. You would not blame the fire for creating it, or the forest for containing it. You would not launch into a long story about how unfair it is that this particular coal was in your path. The searing pain of the coal itself would be the only teacher you need, and the lesson would be immediate and absolute. Let go. The Buddha then explained that our resentments, our regrets, our self-criticisms, and our painful memories are exactly like this hot coal. The initial event that created the coal may have happened many years ago. That was the first arrow. But it is our continuous act of holding onto it in our minds, our act of clinging to the story, our thirst for the past to have been different, that burns us, moment after moment, day after day. The suffering is not in the memory itself, any more than the suffering is in the coal. The suffering is in the grasping. Freedom is not about finding a way to make the coal magically disappear. Freedom is about learning, finally, how to open your hand. This is why letting go is so often misunderstood. Hearing this, many people fear that letting go means becoming cold, detached, or indifferent. They believe it means pretending the past didn't happen, or that the pain wasn't real and didn't matter. This is not at all what it means. Letting go is not an act of apathy. It is a profound act of wisdom and radical self-compassion. It is looking at the hot coal in your hand, acknowledging its heat and the pain it is causing you, and choosing to stop the self-inflicted harm. It is recognizing the utter futility of clinging. It is understanding that grasping onto something that is inherently intangible and ever-changing, like a memory or an emotion, is as impossible as trying to build a house on the surface of a flowing river. Letting go is the gentle but firm shift in perspective from "this shouldn't have happened" to "this happened, and it was deeply painful, and now, out of kindness for myself, I choose not to continue burning myself with it in the present moment." So now we have the complete diagnosis. We see the condition, dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness and suffering of life, and we understand its root cause, tanha, the compulsive thirst and clinging that compels us to keep holding onto the hot coal. The diagnosis is clear, the cause is understood. The hot coal is in our hand, and we can feel it searing our skin. The next logical, compassionate, and urgent step is to learn how to open the hand. It is not enough to understand intellectually that we should let go. We need a practice. We need a direct, experiential tool that allows us to gently and skillfully loosen our neurotic grip. We need a way to come out of the chaotic, storytelling mind and into the simple, unadorned reality of the present moment, where the choice to let go becomes possible. Fortunately, this tool is not something we need to buy or earn or seek from an external source. It is something we already possess, a constant, faithful companion that has been with us from the moment of our birth to this very second. It is the simple, profound, and healing power of the breath. We have arrived at a crucial turning point in our journey. We have looked honestly at our condition, the truth of dukkha. We have identified its root cause, the relentless thirst and clinging of tanha. We are standing, metaphorically, with the burning coal of our past suffering held tightly in our hand. We understand, intellectually, that we must open our hand to find relief. But how? How do we translate this understanding into a lived experience? The intellect alone cannot force the fist to unclench. We need more than an idea. We need a practice. We need a direct, experiential tool that can gently coax the fingers to release their grip. We need a way to come out of the chaotic, time-traveling stories of the mind and land softly in the solid ground of the present moment. Fortunately, this tool is not something exotic or rare. It is not something you must purchase or achieve. It is, in fact, the most intimate and faithful companion you have ever known. It has been with you, quietly and constantly, from the very first moment you arrived in this world, and it will be with you until your very last. It is the simple, profound, and readily available power of your own breath. The breath is the bridge between the mind and the body, the invisible thread that connects the conscious and unconscious realms, and it is our greatest ally in learning how to let go. So right now, wherever you are, whether you are sitting or lying down or even walking, I invite you to join in a simple experiment. You don't need to sit in a special posture or close your eyes unless you feel comfortable doing so. The only invitation is to allow your body to find a posture of ease and dignity. Let your shoulders soften, let your hands rest gently, and then simply bring your attention to the sensation of your own breathing. Without trying to change it in any way, just notice it. You might feel the cool air entering your nostrils and the warm air leaving. You might feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest, or you might feel the expansion and contraction of your abdomen. Choose one of these spots, whichever is most clear to you, and simply rest your attention there, as you would rest your hand on the head of a sleeping cat. Your only task is to feel the sensation of one single breath, the in-breath and the out-breath. There is no need to control it, to deepen it, or to make it more spiritual. The breath breathes itself. It has been doing so your entire life without any help from your conscious mind. Your job is not to manage the breath, but simply to offer it your gentle, curious attention. Feel the beginning of the inhalation, the middle, and the end. Feel the slight pause that may follow. Then feel the beginning of the exhalation, the middle, and the end. That is all. Now, something will happen. Inevitably, your mind will wander. This is absolutely guaranteed. A thought will arise. A memory will surface. A sound will catch your attention. And like a curious puppy, your mind will run off after it. Please listen to this next instruction carefully, as it is the most important part of the entire practice. The moment you notice that your mind has wandered, you have not failed. You have not made a mistake. In fact, you have just succeeded, because the moment of noticing is a moment of mindfulness itself. It is a moment of waking up. So, when you notice your mind has wandered off, there is no need to scold yourself or to feel frustrated. Simply acknowledge, the mind has wandered, and then, as gently and as kindly as you would guide a lost child back home, you escort your attention back to the sensation of the breath, back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. This process of the mind wandering, of you noticing, and of you gently returning is the practice. It is not about achieving a perfectly still mind. It is about the gentle, patient, and compassionate act of returning, again and again and again. Why is this simple act so powerful? Because the breath is an anchor for your awareness in the often stormy sea of the mind. Our thoughts, by their very nature, are almost always about the past or the future. We ruminate on what has already happened, or we worry about and plan for what has not yet come. Our emotions are often powerful reactions to these thoughts about the past and future, but the breath is different. The breath is always and only happening right now. You cannot breathe in the past. You cannot breathe in the future. You can only breathe in this exact present moment. Therefore, to be fully aware of your breath is, by definition, to be fully in the present moment. Each time you bring your attention back to the breath, you are pulling the anchor of your awareness out of the swirling mud of past regrets and out of the dense fog of future anxieties. You are setting it down firmly in the only place where life is actually happening. Right here, right now. Imagine you must cross a deep, dark chasm on a narrow, swaying rope bridge. The wind is howling, shaking the bridge, and threatening your balance. If you make the mistake of looking down into the abyss, at the jagged rocks and the swirling mist below, you will be paralyzed by vertigo and fear. If you look too far ahead, at the other side of the chasm, you will become overwhelmed by the sheer distance you still have to travel. In either case, looking down or looking too far ahead, you are likely to lose your footing and fall. A wise guide walking with you would offer simple instructions. They would say, do not look down into the chasm of the past. Do not look too far ahead into the uncertainty of the future. Simply bring all of your attention to the single wooden plank directly in front of you. Feel your foot as it lands solidly on the wood. Feel the texture of the rope in your hand, and listen to the sound of your own breathing. Take one step, take one breath, take another step, take another breath. Our life is this rope bridge. The chasm is the vast expanse of our past wounds and our future fears. The practice of mindfulness of the breath is the practice of focusing only on this one step, this one breath. It is the radical act of showing up for your life as it is, in this single, precious, unrepeatable moment. And why is this so crucial for healing? Because the past, where the wound was first inflicted, is gone. It exists now only as a collection of thoughts, images, and memories arising in the present. We cannot travel back in time to change what happened. The future, where we hope to be healed and free of pain, has not yet arrived. It exists only as a projection, a hope, a fantasy, also arising in the present. The only place where life is actually lived, the only place where change can truly occur, the only place where healing is possible, is right here, in the raw, immediate, and vibrant reality of this present moment. When we are anchored in the present, we are not actively feeding the old story with our rumination. We are not fueling our future anxiety with our worry. We are simply being. And in that state of simple, non-judgmental being, the agitated nervous system can finally begin to downregulate. The mind, like the muddy water in the glass, can begin to settle. And the most beautiful thing about the breath is that it is infinitely forgiving. The last hour may have been a chaotic storm of distraction. You may have been completely lost in a painful memory or a spiral of worry. But with the very next inhalation, you have a brand new opportunity to begin again. Each breath is a gentle reset button offered to you free of charge, thousands of times a day. It is a new beginning. With each conscious exhalation, you can even imagine that you are releasing a little bit of the tension you have been holding in your body and mind. You can let go of the tightness in your shoulders. You can release the clenching in your jaw. You can soften the knot of worry in your belly. Each breath can be a small, conscious act of letting go. It creates a tiny clearing of peace, a small island of stillness in the midst of the storm. And over time, as you practice, these small islands of stillness begin to connect, forming a vast and stable inner landscape of tranquility. This practice of anchoring in the breath is the foundation. It is the practical method for learning how to open the hand and drop the hot coal, even if just for a moment, to give your scorched hand a rest. It is the skill of finding the quiet, stable eye of the hurricane. And once we have established this anchor, once we have found this place of relative stability and safety in the present moment, we can then begin to work more directly and skillfully with the difficult thoughts and emotions that arise. We can begin to learn the subtle, profound, and truly life-altering practice known as the art of letting go. Having established our anchor in the safe harbor of the breath, we can now approach one of the most essential and often most misunderstood aspects of the healing journey. From this place of relative stillness, where we are not entirely swept away by the storm of the mind, we can begin to learn and practice the subtle, profound, and life-altering skill of letting go. In the ancient teachings, this is sometimes referred to by the word nekama, which is often translated as renunciation. But this is not the renunciation of the world, of joy, or of life itself. It is the wise and compassionate inner renunciation of the very things that cause us to suffer: our clinging, our resentments, our self-limiting stories, and our resistance to reality. This is not a grim duty, but a joyful release. It is the art of unburdening the heart. The first thing we must understand is that letting go is not and can never be an act of force. Our habitual way of dealing with unwanted thoughts or feelings is to try to fight them. When a painful memory arises, our instinct is to try and violently push it out of our mind. We tell ourselves, "Don't think about that. Stop feeling this way." We try to suppress it, to wrestle it into submission. But as we have all experienced, this strategy always backfires. Trying not to think about something is the surest way to guarantee that it stays at the forefront of your mind. It is like trying to flatten a cork by pushing it under the water. The moment you release the pressure, it bobs back up with even more force. This forceful approach is not letting go. It is simply another, more aggressive form of clinging. It is the thirst for non-existence, vibhava tanha, in action. It is an act of war against ourselves, and it only ever creates more tension, more struggle, and more suffering. True letting go is something else entirely. It is not an act of doing, but an act of seeing. It is not a decision made by the struggling, willful ego. It is a natural, effortless release that occurs when a moment of wisdom dawns upon us. It happens when we see, with absolute, gut-level clarity, the profound and unnecessary suffering that is caused by holding on. Let us return to the image of the hot coal. When you realize the object in your hand is a burning coal, you do not need to engage in a long internal debate. You do not need to give yourself a motivational speech about the benefits of dropping it. The direct, immediate experience of the searing pain is all the motivation required. The hand opens by itself. It is the only intelligent response to the situation. The letting go is not a feat of willpower. It is the natural consequence of clear seeing. This is where our practice of mindfulness becomes so crucial. By using the breath as our anchor, we develop the stability to look at our painful thoughts and emotions without being immediately swept away by them. We can hold them in our awareness, much like a scientist holds a specimen under a microscope. We can observe the painful memory, the wave of anger, the pang of jealousy, and as we watch it, we can also feel, with great intimacy, what it is doing to our body and mind in this present moment. We can feel the tightness it creates in the chest. We can feel the heat rising in our face. We can feel the clenching in our stomach. We can notice the cascade of other negative thoughts it triggers. We are, in effect, feeling the burn of the hot coal. When we see this connection directly, when we see that this act of mental clinging is the direct cause of this present moment, physical and emotional pain, something inside us begins to shift. The desire to keep holding on naturally begins to wane. The letting go arises not from a command to stop it, but from a compassionate whisper that says, "My friend, this is hurting you. It is all right to put it down." This art of letting go applies most powerfully to the stories we tell ourselves. Our minds are narrative machines. We do not experience raw data. We experience a world that is already interpreted, judged, and woven into a complex web of stories. And the most powerful of these stories are the ones we tell about ourselves and about others, especially those stories that are connected to our deepest wounds. Let us first consider the story of me. When we are wounded, we often unconsciously build our identity around that wound. The story might be, "I am unlovable," a narrative born from a childhood of neglect or a painful rejection. It might be, "I am a failure," a story cemented by a single mistake that we were never able to forgive ourselves for. It might be, "I am permanently damaged," or "I am a victim," or "I am not good enough." These are not just fleeting thoughts. They become the fundamental operating principles of our lives. They become a distorted lens through which we see everything. If our core story is "I am unlovable," we will unconsciously filter our experiences to find evidence that confirms it. We will overlook signs of affection and amplify moments of perceived rejection. We become a lawyer, prosecuting a case against our own worthiness, and we are ruthlessly effective at finding evidence to support our claim. Letting go of this story is terrifying because it feels like we are letting go of ourselves. But the practice is not to deny that the past events happened. The practice is to question the identity we have built from them. Are you truly 100% a failure? Or are you a vast, complex, and evolving human being who has experienced failure? Are you, in your essence, unlovable? Or are you a vast capacity for love that has been deeply hurt and has learned to protect itself? Letting go of the story is the act of unfusing from the label. It is the recognition that you are the sky, not the stormy cloud of your self-concept. Then there is the story of the other. This is the story of resentment, the narrative we build around the person or people who have hurt us. It is a story we play on a loop in our minds. They did it on purpose. They are a bad, malicious person. They knew exactly how much it would hurt me. We become the righteous prosecutor and the wounded victim, and we put the other person in a mental prison, retrying their case day after day. And while some of our judgments may be factually correct, the act of clinging to this story only serves one purpose. It keeps us chained to the very person who hurt us. It is as if we are drinking a slow-acting poison and hoping the other person will get sick. Letting go of this story does not mean condoning their behavior. It does not mean you have to call them and forgive them. It does not even mean you have to like them. It is a purely internal act, done for your own freedom. It is the conscious withdrawal of your precious mental energy from the story of what they did, so that you can use that energy to heal what you are feeling in the here and now. It is deciding that you will no longer allow someone from your past to occupy real estate in your mind, rent-free, in the present. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly encapsulates this entire dynamic. Two monks, an older one named Tanzan and a younger one named Aikido, were on a long journey, walking along a country road. It had been raining for days, and the road was a river of thick, deep mud. As they rounded a bend, they came upon a young woman dressed in a beautiful silk kimono, who was standing by the side of the road, unable to cross because the mud would ruin her fine clothes. She was clearly distressed. The younger monk, Aikido, immediately averted his eyes. He was a very strict monk, and their monastic rules were clear and absolute. A monk should never touch a woman, or even look at one for too long, lest it lead to impure thoughts. He stood there, paralyzed by his adherence to the rules, feeling a mixture of pity for the woman and judgment toward the situation. The older monk, Tanzan, simply looked at the situation. He saw the woman's distress and the impassable road. Without a word, he walked over to her, bent down, and gracefully lifted her into his arms. He carried her across the sea of mud and gently set her down on the dry ground on the other side. The woman bowed deeply in gratitude, and Tanzan simply bowed back and continued on his way. Aikido, shocked and appalled, quickly followed, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and anger. For the next several hours, as they walked on in silence, Aikido's inner world was a raging storm. He replayed the scene over and over. How could he do that? He broke our sacred vows. He is not a true monk. What will people think? He was no longer walking on the path. He was wading through the thick, heavy mud of his own judgments and resentments. The silence between them grew heavier and heavier, filled with Aikido's unspoken accusations. Finally, as they approached their destination for the evening, Aikido could bear it no longer. He burst out, "Tanzan, we are monks. We are not supposed to go near females, especially not young and lovely ones. It is dangerous. Why did you do that? How could you break our precepts?" Tanzan looked at the younger monk, his face calm and his eyes clear. He replied softly, "I left the girl there by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This question is one of the most powerful in all of Zen literature. Tanzan carried the woman physically, for a single moment, as an act of pure, unthinking compassion. He addressed the reality of the situation, and then he let it go completely. His mind was free. Aikido, on the other hand, did not touch the woman, but he carried her in his mind for miles and hours. He was weighed down, not by the woman, but by his clinging to the rules, his judgments, his story about what had happened. This story shows us the profound difference between an event and the narrative we build around it. The art of letting go is the art of learning to leave the woman, the painful event, by the side of the river where it happened, and not carry it with us one step further down the road. This art extends beyond our personal stories and into our very way of being in the world. Many of us are burdened by a deep need to be right. In conversations, in arguments, in our own opinions, we cling desperately to our position. This need is often a defense mechanism of a fragile ego, a way of trying to prove our worth and validate our view of the world. But this clinging creates immense tension. It turns conversations into battles and relationships into power struggles. The practice of letting go invites us to ask a revolutionary question. Would I rather be right, or would I rather be at peace? Letting go of the need to be right is not about becoming a passive doormat. It is about prioritizing connection and inner freedom over the fleeting satisfaction of a victorious ego. Similarly, we cling to the need for control. We live in a world of profound uncertainty, and this scares us. So, we try to control outcomes. We try to manage other people's perceptions of us. We try to force our feelings to be a certain way. This is a futile and exhausting struggle against the very nature of life, which is inherently fluid, unpredictable, and uncontrollable. Letting go of the need for control is about cultivating trust. It is the profound relaxation that comes from trusting the process of life and trusting our own inner resources to handle whatever comes our way. It is the realization that we do not need to manage the entire universe, and that our attempts to do so are the source of most of our anxiety. Like any art, letting go is a skill that must be practiced. It is a muscle that must be trained. You do not begin weightlifting by trying to lift the heaviest weight in the gym. You start with something small and manageable. In the same way, You can train your letting go muscle on the small, daily annoyances of life. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You receive an irritating email. Your favorite mug breaks. These are the small, hot coals of daily life. The normal habit is to pick them up and carry them with us, allowing a minor incident to sour our mood for the next hour. The practice is to use these moments as training. When the annoyance arises, first, just recognize it. Annoyance is here. Feel it in your body, the tightness in your jaw, the heat in your face. See the immediate cost of holding on to it. Then, breathe. Soften the muscles around the feeling, and on the out-breath, form the clear intention to release your grip, to let it go, to leave the broken mug in the past where it belongs, and not carry its shards with you into the next moment. You may have to do this 10 times or 100 times, but each time you practice, you are weakening the old habit of clinging and strengthening the new, liberating habit of release. Each small act of letting go builds your capacity to let go of the larger, heavier burdens you carry. This art of letting go, this practice of opening the hand, becomes profoundly easier when we gain a deeper insight into the nature of the world and our own reactions to it. When we begin to see that the external event, the first arrow, is often neutral and empty of any inherent meaning, like an empty boat drifting on the water, we begin to realize that the vast majority of our suffering is generated entirely from within our own minds. Understanding this distinction between the event and our reaction to it is the key to unlocking an even deeper and more unshakable level of freedom. Having learned to anchor ourselves in the present moment through the breath, we can begin to apply the subtle and liberating art of letting go. This practice becomes profoundly easier, not through sheer force of will, but through a fundamental shift in perception. It is a shift that allows us to see the events of our lives not as personal attacks, but as something far more neutral. We suffer less from what happens to us, and more from our interpretation of the intention behind what happens to us. To illustrate this vital distinction, there is a timeless Zen and Taoist parable, a story so simple yet so deep that it has the power to change your entire relationship with the world. It is the story of the empty boat. Imagine a man, a sage perhaps, who has grown weary of the noise and complications of the world. He seeks solitude and peace. One morning, just as the dawn is breaking, he takes his small, simple boat out onto a vast, tranquil lake. A thick mist hangs over the water, softening the edges of the world and muffling all sound. The only thing he can hear is the gentle lapping of the water against the hull of his boat and the rhythmic dip of his own oar. He closes his eyes, breathing in the cool, clean air, feeling a sense of deep stillness and connection with the universe. He is utterly at peace. Suddenly, out of the silent mist, another boat appears and collides sharply with the side of his own. The jolt shatters his tranquility. His eyes snap open, and his heart fills with a hot surge of anger. Who is this careless fool, he thinks, who dares to ruin my peace? Who is so inept that they cannot navigate a wide-open lake? He turns, his mouth already forming the shape of a curse, ready to shout at the person who has so rudely disturbed him. He sees the other boat clearly now, and he prepares to unleash his frustration upon its pilot. But then, he stops. He looks more closely, and he realizes with a jolt of a different kind that there is no one in the other boat. It is empty. It has simply broken loose from its moorings somewhere up the shore and has been drifting silently with the unseen currents of the lake. In that instant, everything changes. What happens to his anger? It has nowhere to go. It has no object to latch onto. There is no careless fool to blame, no malicious intent to resent. The event itself is identical a collision, but his perception of it has been completely transformed. His anger, which was so real and so hot just a moment before, simply dissolves like the mist on the water. It vanishes, replaced not by forgiveness, but by a simple understanding of the situation. There is nothing to forgive. It was just an event, an empty boat carried by the current. And so, without any further thought or emotional turmoil, he simply takes his oar, gently pushes the empty boat away from his own, and continues on his journey, his inner peace quickly restored. This story is a profound metaphor for our entire lives. The lake is the field of our experience. We are in our boat, trying to navigate our journey, and the other boats are the people, the situations, and the events that we encounter. All day long, boats collide with us. A colleague makes a critical comment in a meeting. A driver cuts us off on the highway. A friend forgets to call us back. Our partner says something thoughtless. These are the collisions of daily life. Our default, conditioned reaction is to assume that there is always a pilot in the other boat. We take everything personally. We believe that the collision is an intentional act, directed specifically at us. He intentionally tried to undermine me in that meeting to make himself look better. That driver has no respect and is a terrible person. She knew I was waiting for her call. She just doesn't care about me. When we think this way, we are choosing to see an inhabited boat. We create a villain, a story of malicious intent, and we make ourselves the victim of their actions. This act of personalization is the very genesis of the second arrow. The collision is the first arrow. It is a moment of pain or discomfort. But our story about the pilot, our assumption of their intent, our subsequent anger and resentment, that is the second, third, and fourth arrow that we shoot into ourselves. We allow the other person's boat to not only collide with us, but to attach itself to us. And we then drag it with us for the rest of the day, or for weeks, or even for years, replaying the injustice in our minds, feeling the burn of the hot coal over and over again. The liberating wisdom of the empty boat teaching is the invitation to consider a radical possibility. Most of the hay boats that collide with us are empty. The person who snapped at you was not aiming their anger at you, the essential you. They were in their own boat, lost in their own fog of suffering. Perhaps they had a terrible night's sleep. Perhaps they are under immense financial pressure, or are dealing with a sick parent, or are simply terrified of not being good enough. Their sharp word was not a personal attack on you. It was a symptom of their own pain, a drifting boat from their own troubled shore that happened to bump into yours. The driver who cut you off might be rushing to the hospital. The friend who forgot to call might be struggling with a depression so heavy they can barely get out of bed. When we can begin to see the world this way, it doesn't mean we become passive or allow others to harm us. It does not mean we don't set firm boundaries. Pushing the empty boat away is a necessary action. You can still say, when you speak to me in that tone, it is not acceptable. You can still take action to protect yourself, but you can do so from a place of clarity and peace, rather than from a place of reactive, personalized anger. The practice of the empty boat frees you from the immense, exhausting burden of resentment. It allows you to deal with the situation at hand, the collision itself, without the added poison of a story about the pilot. So how do we practice this in our daily lives? The key, as always, is to insert a moment of mindfulness between the event and our reaction. That moment is our freedom. When a collision happens, when you feel that initial flash of hurt, anger, or irritation, the first step is to use your breath as an anchor. Take one conscious breath. This single breath creates a sacred pause. It interrupts the lightning-fast, unconscious habit of personalization. In that pause, you can ask yourself a simple, transformative question. What if this is an empty boat? Just ask the question. You don't even need to know the answer. The question itself is a powerful antidote to reactivity. It opens up a space of curiosity and wonder, rather than slamming the door shut with the certainty of blame. In that space, You can practice generating a form of compassionate curiosity. You can wonder about the invisible currents that might be moving the other person's boat. Instead of focusing on the impact on you, you can wonder what might be happening in their world that would cause them to act this way. What suffering might they be experiencing? This shift is profound. It moves you out of the narrow, self-centered role of victim and into the vast, open-hearted role of wise observer. Your anger, which needs a target to survive, begins to soften and dissolve, often replaced by a feeling of empathy or, at the very least, a neutral understanding. The freedom this practice brings is immense. When you see an empty boat, you don't have to carry the story of the collision with you. You don't have to spend your precious mental and emotional energy replaying the event, building a case against the pilot, and nurturing your grievance. You simply deal with the situation, you push the boat away, and you continue on your journey down the lake, your inner peace intact. Your tranquility is no longer a fragile thing, dependent on everyone else behaving perfectly. It becomes a robust, resilient quality that you carry within you, a peace that cannot be shattered by the inevitable, drifting collisions of life. This practice of seeing the empty boat is a powerful way to stop adding new layers of suffering to our lives. It helps us navigate the external world with more grace and wisdom. But what about the quality of the inner world itself? What about the state of the lake on which we are floating? To cultivate the wisdom to see the empty boat in the first place, and to have the compassion to not react, we must also actively cultivate the soil of our own mind. We must learn to consciously plant the seeds of kindness, clarity, and wisdom, while gently and patiently removing the weeds of hatred, confusion, and fear. This is the essential work of tending to our own inner garden. The practice of seeing the empty boat allows us to navigate the external world with a newfound sense of peace and freedom. It is a powerful shield against the first arrows that fly towards us from the outside. But an equally important, if not more important, part of our journey involves the cultivation of our own inner world. For even on a perfectly calm lake with no other boats in sight, a storm can still rage within our own vessel. This inner world, this mind, is not a static, unchangeable landscape. It is a garden, and you are the gardener. This is perhaps one of the most hopeful and empowering metaphors the Buddhist tradition offers. Your mind is not a fixed entity, predetermined and set in stone. It is a living, dynamic, and fertile piece of land, and its condition is determined entirely by how you choose to tend to it. Let us explore this metaphor. The soil of the garden is your basic consciousness, the fundamental awareness that is your birthright. It is inherently fertile, capable of growing anything. The external events of your life, the weather, the changing seasons, things you cannot always control. Sometimes there will be brilliant sunshine and gentle rain. At other times, there will be droughts, floods, and violent storms. This is the nature of life. Now, within this soil, countless seeds are lying dormant, and because of the winds of karma, culture, and personal history, seeds are constantly being blown into your garden from the outside. Some of these are seeds for beautiful flowers, the seeds of love, joy, compassion, and wisdom. Others are the seeds of troublesome weeds, the seeds of anger, fear, jealousy, and despair. Here is the first crucial realization of the wise gardener. You are not in complete control of which seeds sprout. No matter how vigilant you are, weeds will appear. A critical comment from someone can plant a seed of doubt. A frightening news story can plant a seed of anxiety. A memory from an old wound can cause the weed of resentment to suddenly sprout. To expect a garden completely free of weeds is to set yourself up for frustration and failure. Seeing a weed grow in your garden is not a sign that you are a bad gardener. It is simply the nature of gardens. It is not a moral failing. The true power of the gardener lies not in preventing every weed from sprouting, but in the conscious choice of what to cultivate. You possess two of the most powerful gardening tools in the universe. The first is your attention, which is the watering can. The second is your intention, which is the life-giving sunlight. Whatever you consistently place your attention on, you are watering. Whatever you hold in the light of your intention, you are encouraging to grow. When a weed of anger sprouts, you have a choice. You can water it. You can do this by replaying the infuriating event over and over in your mind, by listing all the reasons why your anger is justified, by indulging in fantasies of revenge. If you do this, the weed of anger will grow strong. Its roots will dig deep into the soil, choking out the plants around it, and it will produce thousands more seeds of its own, ensuring a future harvest of bitterness. Or you can choose not to water it. You can acknowledge its presence. Anger is here and then. Consciously withdraw the watering can of your attention and place it somewhere else, perhaps on the feeling of the breath or on a flower of gratitude that is growing nearby. By refusing to water the weed, you do not engage in a violent struggle with it. You simply let it be, and without your nourishment, it will eventually wither and die on its own. This leads to the second profound insight. The seeds for every possible human quality are already present within the soil of your mind. You do not need to import anything from the outside. You already possess the seed of boundless compassion, and you also possess the seed of bitter rage. The seed of unshakable patience lies dormant right next to the seed of frantic anxiety. The seed of selfless generosity coexists with the seed of grasping greed. The seed of profound forgiveness is there, alongside the seed of stubborn resentment. The entire spiritual path is not about becoming something you are not. It is about recognizing the wholesome seeds that are already within you and consciously choosing to water them, to give them the sunlight of your intention so they can grow strong and transform the entire landscape of your mind. You are not a fundamentally flawed being who needs to be fixed. You are a fertile garden containing every possibility. The work is not one of new construction, but of loving, patient cultivation. There is a wise and beautiful story told by the Cherokee people that illuminates this principle perfectly. An old elder is sitting with his young grandchild by a fire, teaching him about the ways of the world. The child has been troubled by a conflict he feels inside himself, and he turns to his grandfather for guidance. The elder says to the boy, "A great fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible and constant fight, and it is between two wolves." The child's eyes grow wide. The elder continues, "One wolf is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, and ego. He thrives in darkness and feeds on fear." He paused, letting the image sink in. "The other wolf," he said, his voice softening, "is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. He thrives in the light and feeds on love." The young boy sat silently for a moment, imagining this epic battle raging within his beloved grandfather. Then he looked up with a troubled expression and asked the crucial question, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." This simple story holds the key to transforming our inner world. Feeding the wolf is watering the seed. Every moment of every day, we are making a choice. When you choose to dwell on a past hurt, replaying it in your mind, you are feeding the wolf of resentment. When you scroll through social media and compare your life to the curated perfection of others, you are feeding the wolf of envy and inferiority. When you lash out in anger at a loved one, you are feeding the wolf of rage. Conversely, when you pause to notice the beauty of a sunset, you are feeding the wolf of joy and serenity. When you choose to offer a kind word to someone who is struggling, you are feeding the wolf of compassion. When you sit in quiet meditation and simply watch your breath, you are feeding the wolf of peace. The choice is yours in this moment, and this one, and this one. It is a continuous practice of conscious, intentional nourishment. So how, practically, do we go about this work of gardening, of feeding the right wolf? We can think of it as a two-part practice. The first part is the active cultivation of the flowers. This involves consciously introducing wholesome mental states into our lives. We can practice gratitude by intentionally taking a few moments each day to list 3 or 4 things we are thankful for, no matter how small. This simple act waters the seeds of joy and contentment and shifts the mind's focus from what is lacking to what is abundant. We can perform small, conscious acts of kindness. This doesn't require grand gestures. Holding a door for someone, offering a genuine smile to a cashier, sending a message to a friend to let them know you are thinking of them. These small acts water the seed of benevolence in our own heart and in the world. We can also practice mindful consumption. We can pay attention to the books we read, the podcasts we listen to, the movies we watch, and the conversations we participate in. Are these things feeding the wolf of fear, division, and cynicism? Or are they feeding the wolf of understanding, connection, and hope? The second part of the practice is learning how to deal with the weeds. As we said, they will inevitably sprout. This is where our mindfulness practice is the essential gardening tool. Mindfulness is like the gardener's hand, gently and expertly feeling the texture of the soil. It is the faculty of awareness that allows you to recognize a weed when it is still just a tiny, vulnerable sprout. You can catch the very first flicker of irritation before it blossoms into rage. You can notice the first whisper of self-doubt before it becomes a chorus of self-criticism. In these moments of early recognition, you have the most power. You can see the weed clearly for what it is, and instead of watering it with your attention, you can gently uproot it through the practice of non-engagement. You simply acknowledge its presence without judgment. The seed of resentment is sprouting, and then you lovingly withdraw your attention, your water and sunlight. You place that attention instead on the breath or on a wholesome object. You starve the weed by refusing to feed it. This is not suppression. It is a wise and skillful redirection of energy. Over time, as you repeat this practice, you are building new neural pathways in your brain. You are training yourself in the liberating habit of release rather than the painful habit of clinging. This patient, moment-to-moment work of tending our inner garden, of consciously watering the flowers and refraining from watering the wheatsis, the very heart of the spiritual life. It is the way we take responsibility for our own happiness and our own suffering, and this entire process is made infinitely more effective when we come to understand the fundamental climate in which this garden exists. Every plant, every flower, and every weed that grows in the soil of our mind is subject to a universal and inescapable law of nature. It is the law that governs the turning of the seasons, the law that dictates that the beautiful flower will eventually fade, and the stubborn weed will also eventually wither. It is the law that nothing, absolutely nothing, can stay the same forever. It is the profound and liberating truth of impermanence. The patient work of tending to our inner garden, of watering the flowers of wholesome states and refraining from watering the weeds of unwholesome ones, is made infinitely more effective when we understand the fundamental climate in which this garden exists. Every single thing in our inner and outer world, from the most stubborn weed of resentment to the most beautiful flower of joy, is governed by a universal, inescapable, and profoundly liberating law. The Buddha gave this law a name, anicca. It is the truth of impermanence. To understand anicca not just as an idea, but as a deep, visceral reality, is to unlock a supreme peace that is not dependent on circumstances. At its simplest level, anicca means that everything changes. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is static. On the surface, this seems obvious. We see the seasons change. We watch our children grow. We observe the cycle of birth and death in nature. But the teaching of anicca goes much deeper than this. It states that not only do things change over time, but that nothing is static for even a single fleeting moment. The river you see now is not the same river you saw a second ago. New water is constantly flowing through it. The solid table in front of you is, at the subatomic level, a vibrant, chaotic dance of energy and space. Your own body, which feels so solid and familiar, is in a state of constant flux, with millions of cells dying and being reborn in every passing second. You are not a noun, you are a verb. You are not a thing, you are a process. Our deepest suffering arises from a fundamental conflict with this truth. We live in a world that is a flowing river, yet we desperately try to build a solid, permanent house right in the middle of it. We crave permanence in a universe whose very nature is change. This is the engine of our dissatisfaction. We experience a moment of intense joy or pleasure, and our immediate instinct, our tanha, is to grasp it, to hold on to it, to try and make it last forever. This is the suffering of change, the viparinama dukkha. We experience a moment of intense pain or sorrow, and we feel a deep terror that it will never end, that it will become a permanent feature of our lives. This is the suffering of clinging to a false idea of permanence. In both cases, we are arguing with reality, and reality always wins. The practice of understanding anicca is a practice of contemplation, of looking deeply into our own experience. Let us begin with the body. Take a moment to reflect on the impermanence of this physical form. It began as two tiny cells, grew in the womb, was born as a helpless infant. It grew into a child, then an adolescent, then an adult. It has experienced periods of health and vitality, and perhaps periods of sickness or injury. It is aging, changing, right now, in this very moment, even if you cannot perceive it. It is not a fixed entity. It is a temporary vessel, a process unfolding in time. When we see this clearly, our obsessive attachment to its appearance and our deep fear of its aging and eventual decay can begin to soften. Now, consider your feelings and emotions. Think of a powerful emotion you felt just yesterday. Perhaps it was joy, or anger, or boredom, or sadness. Where is that feeling now? It arose in your consciousness, perhaps stayed for a few minutes or a few hours, and then, like a cloud passing in the sky, it dissipated. It was replaced by other feelings, other moods. Emotions are like the weather. They are not solid, and they are not you. They are transient atmospheric conditions passing through the vast, open sky of your awareness. When we forget this, we identify with the storm. We say, "I am angry," and we become a solid knot of anger. When we remember anicca, we can say, "Ah, the energy of anger is passing through me." This creates a space of wisdom and non-identification, allowing the emotion to arise, to be felt, and to pass away naturally without causing a second arrow. Look even more closely at your thoughts. Try to watch your own mind for just 30 seconds. You will notice that it is a ceaseless waterfall of transient events. A thought about what to eat for dinner appears, and is instantly replaced by a memory from childhood, which is then pushed aside by a worry about a future task. One thought arises, it glimmers for a moment, and it is gone, replaced by the next. There is no solidity here at all. The mind is a torrent of impermanence. To grasp onto any single thought and believe it to be a solid, permanent truth about yourself or the world is like trying to catch a single drop of water in the middle of Niagara Falls. This brings us to one of the most powerful and consoling stories about this truth. There was once a great king who was a man of powerful emotions. In times of victory, his elation and pride were immense, leading him to arrogance. In times of defeat or difficulty, his despair was bottomless, leading him to hopelessness. He grew tired of this exhausting swing between extremes and summoned the wise sages of his court. He said to them, "I want you to create for me a special ring. On this ring, you must engrave a message, a few short words that have a magical quality. When I am in the depths of my sorrow, these words must lift my spirits. And when I am in the heights of my triumph, these words must bring me back down to earth and grant me humility." The sages conferred for a long time, and finally, they returned to the king. They presented him not with an ornate, jewel-encrusted ring, but with a simple silver band. The king looked at it and saw engraved on its surface just 4 simple words: "This too shall pass." The king instantly understood the profound wisdom. When his kingdom was threatened, when he lost a battle, when he was filled with grief or fear, he would look at the ring. "This too shall pass." The words were a powerful reminder that his pain was not a permanent state. The storm would end. The night would give way to dawn. This gave him the strength to endure, and it broke the spell of hopelessness. Conversely, when he won a great victory, when he was surrounded by adulation, when he felt swollen with pride and pleasure, he would look at the ring. "This too shall." It was a sobering reminder of the truth of change. It prevented him from becoming arrogant, and it stopped him from clinging desperately to his moment of glory because he knew it was as fleeting as the last storm. It allowed him to appreciate his happiness without grasping and to savor the victory without becoming attached to it. This ancient story is a perfect guide for how to apply the wisdom of Anika to our own lives, especially to our old wounds. When we are trapped in the grip of a painful memory or a deep-seated feeling of shame or sadness, it can feel eternal. It can feel like a solid, unchanging, permanent feature of our personality. We can think, "I will always feel this way. This pain is me." This is the belief that causes the deepest despair. The wisdom of "this too shall pass" is a light that shines on this belief and reveals it to be an illusion. The intense pain you are feeling right now is a weather pattern. It is not your ultimate reality. It is a cloud, and you are the sky. Because it has arisen in time, it must, by the universal law, also pass away in time. This knowledge does not magically erase the pain, but it changes your relationship to it. It allows you to hold it more lightly, to give it space to exist, knowing that it is a temporary visitor, not a permanent resident. It gives you the hope and the courage to endure. And here is the other side of the wisdom, the side that prevents this teaching from being pessimistic. An understanding of impermanence does not destroy our ability to feel joy. It vastly enhances it. When we truly understand that everything is fleeting, every single moment becomes infinitely precious. It is the very fact that the cherry blossoms bloom for only a short time that makes their viewing so poignant and beautiful. If they bloomed all year round, we would soon take them for granted. When you are with a loved one, remembering that this moment is precious and unrepeatable encourages you to be fully present, to listen more deeply, to appreciate them more fully. When you experience a moment of simple peace or happiness, knowing it is impermanent allows you to savor it completely, without the anxiety of trying to make it last forever. It replaces the frantic energy of clinging with the calm, spacious energy of appreciation. This deep, visceral understanding of impermanence, that all things are in flux, that pleasure is fleeting, and that our deepest pain, too, shall pass naturally, begins to soften the heart. It erodes our arrogance and our certainty. As we apply this insight to ourselves, we cannot help but apply it to others. When we look around at our fellow human beings, we no longer see solid, separate, and permanent entities. We see fellow travelers, floating alongside us on this great, flowing river of change. We see them desperately clinging to their fleeting joys, just as we do. We see them trying to push away their inevitable sorrows, just as we do. We see their profound vulnerability, their inherent fragility, their shared subjection to this universal law. From this clear seeing, an authentic and powerful connection is born. This recognition of our deeply shared condition is the fertile ground from which the beautiful, resilient flower of true compassion begins to grow. The deep and visceral understanding of impermanence, the truth that all things must pass, naturally begins to soften the soil of our heart. As we see the constant flux in our own lives, we begin to recognize it in the lives of others. We see their hidden struggles, their quiet attachments, their silent fears of loss, and we recognize them as our own. This clear seeing of our shared vulnerability in the face of this universal law gives birth to one of the most beautiful qualities of the human heart. In the Buddhist tradition, this quality is called karuna. It is the truth of compassion. Karuna is not the same as pity. Pity looks down from a distance. It creates separation between the one who pities and the one who is pitied, saying, "Oh, that poor person, I am so glad I am not in their situation." Compassion, on the other hand, is the heart's trembling in the face of suffering. It is a feeling with, not a feeling for. It closes the distance, recognizing the shared humanity in the other's pain. It is the active aspiration, the deep and sincere wish for all beings to be free from their suffering. It is the energy that moves us to help, to soothe, and to heal. And while we often think of compassion as a quality we direct outwards, towards others, its most crucial, most challenging, and most transformative application is inwards. The foundation of all true healing is the practice of self-compassion. For many of us, this is the most difficult practice of all. We can find it in our hearts to be kind and forgiving to a friend who has made a mistake. But we are often our own harshest critics, our own cruelest judges. We hold ourselves to impossible standards of perfection and then relentlessly punish ourselves when we fall short. We would never speak to a friend the way we often speak to ourselves in the privacy of our own minds. Why is this? It is because we are privy to all of our own secrets. We know every perceived flaw, every past failing, every moment of weakness. We have been conditioned by a culture that often mistakes self-criticism for self-improvement, believing that if we are hard enough on ourselves, we will finally become the person we think we should be. But this approach never works. It is like a surgeon trying to perform a delicate operation with rusty, jagged tools. It only ever causes more trauma, more wounding. Trying to heal our old wounds without self-compassion is impossible. It is self-compassion that provides the gentle light, the sterile instruments, and the soothing balm that makes the deep work of healing possible. To begin this practice, we can use a powerful psychological and spiritual metaphor, the idea of the wounded inner child. Within each of us, regardless of our chronological age, there exists a part of our psyche that holds the emotional experiences of our youth. This inner child is the part of us that still carries the awe, the joy, and the innocence of our early years. But it is also the part that holds the pain of our oldest wounds. When we were children and we experienced a hurt, be it neglect, criticism, rejection, or trauma, often did not have the resources to fully process it. The adult world may have told us to get over it, stop crying, or be a big boy or girl, so we buried the feeling. We sent that wounded part of ourselves into exile, but it never truly left. It lives on within us, and it often runs our adult lives from the shadows. That sudden, overwhelming wave of fear you feel when facing a new challenge, that is often your frightened inner child, afraid of failing again. That intense, seemingly disproportionate rage that erupts when you feel slighted, that is often your inner child, finally screaming out the anger they were not allowed to express long ago. The practice of self-compassion is the practice of ending this inner exile. It is the journey of turning around, walking back into the forgotten corners of our own hearts, and finding that lost and lonely child. I invite you now, in the safety and privacy of your own mind, to try a gentle experiment. Allow your breath to be soft and easy, and then gently call to mind the part of you that holds the memory of an old hurt. Without forcing it, perhaps you can allow an image to arise. You might see a younger version of yourself at the very age when this wound occurred. See this child in your mind's eye. Look at their posture, the expression on their face. Look into their eyes. Our usual habit, our conditioned response, would be to criticize this child, to tell them to be stronger, or to simply turn away because their pain is uncomfortable to witness. But the practice of Karuna invites us to do the opposite. Instead of speaking, we first listen. We create a safe space and ask this child, "What are you feeling? What do you need to say?" We listen with the same open, patient attention that we would offer to a beloved friend. And then we learn to speak to this child and to ourselves with a new voice. It is the voice of unconditional love and acceptance. You might silently offer this child phrases such as, "I see you now. I am here with you. You are not alone anymore." You might say, "I hear your pain, and I am so sorry you had to go through that. It was not your fault." And perhaps most powerfully, you can make a promise. "I will not abandon you ever again. I will stay here with you for as long as you need." This is not just a sentimental exercise. This is a profound act of rewiring your own brain. You are changing your fundamental relationship to your own pain. Think of a loving mother whose young child falls and scrapes their knee. The child comes running to her, wailing, terrified and in pain. What does a good mother do? She does not scold the child for being clumsy. She does not deliver a lecture on the physics of gravity. She does not tell the child that their pain is illogical or an overreaction. She simply opens her arms. She kneels down, holds her child close, and soothes them with her voice and her touch. She says, "Oh, my sweet child, I'm here. It's okay. Let it all out. I've got you." She provides a safe container for the child's pain. She meets the child's distress with a larger field of love and safety, and in that loving embrace, the child's nervous system begins to calm down, and their tears begin to subside. The pain is still there, but it is now held in a field of love, and that makes all the difference. The practice of self-compassion is the practice of learning to become this loving mother for ourselves. When a wave of sadness arises, when a painful memory surfaces, instead of pushing it away or judging it, we learn to open our inner arms. We learn to hold our own pain with this same unconditional, non-judgmental, soothing presence. We say to our own aching heart, "I am here. I see this pain. I will not abandon you." It is okay to feel this way. In the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, this boundless compassion is embodied by the great Bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara, who is known as the one who perceives the cries of the world. This being is often depicted with 1,000 arms, symbolizing their limitless ability to reach out and offer comfort to all who suffer. But Avalokiteshvara is not just an external deity to be prayed to. This is a quality that exists as a potential within every human heart. To practice self-compassion is to activate your own inner Avalokiteshvara. It is the practice of learning to listen to the cries of your own inner world with infinite patience and unconditional love. What is it that truly heals the wound? It is often not that the memory itself is erased or that the past is changed. What heals is our relationship to the wound. For years, perhaps decades, the wounded part of us has lived in exile, ignored, criticized, shamed, and abandoned within our own psyche. The simple, radical act of turning towards it with love, of holding it with tenderness, of listening to it with respect, is profoundly healing. It is like finding a lost child who has been hiding in the cold, dark forest, and finally bringing them home to a warm, safe house. This act of compassionate presence sends a powerful message to the deepest, most primal parts of our brain. It tells our nervous system that the threat is finally over, because there is now a wise, loving adult self at the helm, who promises never to abandon the vulnerable child within. This integration, this inner homecoming, is the very essence of healing. This tender practice of turning towards ourselves with a mother's love can feel immensely challenging at first. We might feel that our pain is too great, too unique, too shameful to be held. We might feel profoundly isolated, as if we are the only person on earth who has ever suffered in this particular way. It is this very feeling of isolation that can block the flow of our own compassion. But what if we were to discover that our personal suffering, as deep and as real as it is not a wall that separates us from others, but a doorway into a profound and unbreakable connection with all of humanity? The next step on our journey of healing is to see our own tear-stained face reflected in the faces of everyone we meet, and in doing so, to realize that we are, and have always been, a part of a much larger story. The tender practice of turning towards ourselves with a mother's love, the practice of karuna, can feel immensely challenging at first. A voice inside us might whisper that our pain is too great, too unique, too shameful to be held. We can feel profoundly isolated in our suffering, as if we are living on a private island of grief, its shores battered by storms that no one else could possibly understand. It is this feeling of separation, this belief in the uniqueness of our own sorrow, that often blocks the flow of compassion, both for ourselves and from others. But what if that island is not an island at all? What if it is, in fact, a peninsula, deeply and irrevocably connected to the vast continent of the human experience? The journey out of the prison of personal suffering lies in the discovery of this connection. There is no story that illustrates this more poignantly than the ancient and powerful tale of a woman named Kisa Gotami. In the time of the Buddha, there lived a young woman named Kisa Gotami. Her life had been one of hardship, and she had found her one true source of joy and purpose in her infant son. He was the sun around which her entire world revolved. All her love, all her hopes, all her identity were poured into this tiny, precious being. Then one day, tragedy struck. The child, without warning, fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami's world did not just darken, it shattered into a million pieces. The pain was so immense, so absolute, that her mind refused to accept it. She entered into a state that others called madness, but for her, it was a desperate act of love. She clutched the cold, still body of her son to her chest and wandered from house to house, begging for medicine. "My son is only sleeping," she would plead. "Please, give me medicine that will wake him." The villagers looked at her with a mixture of fear and pity. Some shooed her away, unable to bear the sight of her raw, untethered grief. Others tried to reason with her gently, saying, "The boy is gone, you must let him go." But to Kisa Gotami, their words were meaningless. They did not understand. Her pain was a fortress, and she was its sole, lonely inhabitant. Finally, a wise old man, seeing the depth of her suffering and the futility of arguing with it, took pity on her. He told her, "I do not have the medicine you seek, but I know a man who does. Go to the enlightened one, the Buddha. He is the great physician, and he will have the cure for your son." A frantic hope ignited in Kisa Gotami's heart. Clutching her son's body even tighter, she ran to the place where the Buddha was teaching. She burst through the crowd, fell at his feet, and laid the body of her child before him. "Master," she cried, her voice cracking with desperation, "they say you are the great physician. Give me the medicine that will cure my boy." The Buddha looked at her, not with pity, but with a gaze of boundless, oceanic compassion. He saw the fortress of her grief, and he knew that to assault it with the hard truth, the truth that her son was dead and could not be revived, would only cause it to crumble, crushing her in the process. He understood that the medicine she needed was not for her son, but for her. So, with infinite skillfulness, he met her exactly where she was. He did not deny her reality. He said to her, "Yes, I can make the medicine you seek, but to do so, I require one very special ingredient." Kisa Gotami's eyes lit up. "What is it, Master? I will find it. I will do anything." The Buddha replied with a calm, gentle voice, "I need only a single, tiny mustard seed. But there is one condition. The mustard seed must be taken from a house where no one and no child, no parent, no spouse, no servanthas ever died." The task seemed impossibly simple. A mustard seed was one of the most common things in any household, filled with a renewed and feverish purpose. Kisa Gotami stood up, thanked the Buddha, and rushed back toward the village, her heart pounding with the hope that she was on the verge of saving her son. She ran to the very first house she saw, a grand mansion, and knocked on the door. A woman answered, and Kisa Gotami breathlessly made her request. "The great Buddha is making medicine for my son. He needs only a mustard seed. Can you spare one?" The woman, happy to help, replied, "Of course, we have plenty," and went to fetch some. As she was about to hand them over, Kisa Gotami remembered the condition. She asked, her voice trembling slightly, "Just one thing. Has anyone in this house, any member of your family, ever died?" The woman's cheerful expression instantly fell away. A shadow of deep sadness passed over her eyes. She looked at Kisa Gotami and said softly, "My dear woman, the living in this house are few, the dead are many. Do not remind us of our deepest grief. We lost our beloved father just last year, disappointed but not defeated." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, a more modest dwelling. Again, she asked for the mustard seed. Again, the family was willing to provide it. And again, she asked her crucial question. The man who answered the door sighed heavily and said, "We have no shortage of mustard seeds, but in this house we lost our beloved wife and mother. There is an empty seat at our table that can never be filled." She continued on, from house to house, from the richest mansions to the poorest huts. At every single door, the story was the same. "We can give you a mustard seed, but here we lost our eldest son. We can give you a mustard seed, but here we lost a cherished sister. We lost a baby, a husband, a parent, a dear friend." Something profound began to happen inside Kisa Gotami. At the beginning of her journey, her mind was filled only with her own singular, all-consuming pain. Her world consisted of only two beings, herself and her dead son. But as she went from door to door, she was forced to listen. She was forced to bear witness to the quiet, dignified sorrow in the eyes of every single person she met. She had thought she was walking the streets of a city full of the living, but she came to see that she was walking through a city of fellow survivors, a city of grievers. The walls of her private fortress of pain began to soften, to become permeable. The sharp, piercing sting of her personal loss began to dissolve into the vast, shared ocean of human sorrow. She had set out to find a cure for her son, but instead, she was finding a cure for herself. As evening approached, she had walked through the entire village and had not found a single house untouched by death. She was weary, her body exhausted, and her arms still cradling the small, cold body of her son. She sat down by the side of the road, looking out over the village. As darkness fell, she watched as the lamps in the houses were lit, one by one, flickering to life across the valley. And then, later in the night, she watched as they were extinguished, one by one, plunging the homes back into darkness. In that moment, a flash of profound insight illuminated her mind. She thought, the lives of men are just like these lamps. They flicker into existence for a short while, and then they are extinguished. She looked down at the child in her arms, and for the first time, she saw not just her personal tragedy, but the universal law of impermanence made manifest. The tight, desperate knot of me and mine inside her finally began to release. Her private, frantic cry of my child, softened into a universal, compassionate understanding. How selfish I have been in my grief. This is the law of the world. Death is not something that happened to me. It is simply the way of all conditioned things. With a heart no longer crazed by denial, but filled with a sober, profound peace, she gently carried her son's body into a nearby forest and laid him to rest. Her madness was gone. Her isolated suffering had been transformed into a universal understanding. She then returned to the Buddha. He saw her approaching and knew a great change had occurred. He asked her, "Have you brought the mustard seed?" She bowed before him and replied, "Master, the work is done. The mustard seed I could not find, but the people of the city have taught me a great lesson. They have told me, the living are few, but the dead are many." The Buddha's medicine had worked. The journey itself was the cure. It had not cured her son of death, but it had cured her of the sickness of isolated, personalized grief. This ancient story is our story. When we are trapped in the pain of our old wounds, we are all Kisa Gautami at the beginning of her journey. We are convinced that our pain is the most important, the most unique, the most unbearable. We are locked inside the fortress of our personal narrative. The Buddha's instruction to find the mustard seed is the path of practice itself. It is the practice of stepping outside of our own story and daring to connect with the stories of others. It is the practice of listening with an open heart. It is the practice of cultivating empathy. It is looking at a stranger and realizing that they too have a hidden sorrow, a secret fear, a cherished memory of someone they have lost. When we truly see this, our own burden begins to lighten, not because our pain has vanished, but because we realize we are not carrying it alone. The weight is distributed across the whole of humanity. It takes the sharp, personal sting out of the suffering. It transforms it from my problem into the human condition. This is the great alchemy of compassion. It turns the lead of private agony into the gold of shared understanding. When you see another person acting out in anger or lost in anxiety, you can see past their difficult behavior and recognize a fellow Kisa Gautami, someone who is clutching the body of a dead hope or a lost dream and simply doesn't know how to let it go. This understanding makes judgment impossible and makes compassion effortless. This profound journey of Kisa Gautami, from the madness of private grief to the wisdom of shared sorrow, reveals a pivotal truth. Our suffering, when seen as a universal experience, begins to lose its personal sting. This leads us to question the very nature of the I that we believe is suffering so uniquely. If the pain of loss is a universal inheritance, if the experience of impermanence is the law for all beings, then who or what is this solid, separate self that we have identified with for so long? What happens when we look deeply for the owner of the pain, for the one who is suffering, and we find that no one is there? This is the next, and perhaps most profound, step on our path. the fearless inquiry into the illusion of the solid self, the courageous journey of Kisa Gotami, from the isolating madness of her personal grief to the profound wisdom of our shared human sorrow, reveals a pivotal truth. When we see our suffering not as a private curse, but as a universal inheritance, the tight, personal sting of it begins to fade. This naturally leads us to a deeper, more fundamental question. We have been speaking of my pain, of healing my wounds, of my story, but who or what is this I that we believe is suffering so uniquely? Who is the permanent owner of this pain? When we look for the one who was wounded, who do we find? This investigation into the nature of the self is the next, and perhaps most profound and liberating, step on our path. It is the exploration of the Buddhist teaching of anatta, often translated as no self. At first, this concept can sound frightening or nihilistic. The idea of no self might seem to suggest that we do not exist, that our lives are meaningless, but this is a complete misunderstanding. Anatta is not a denial of our existence. It is a profound and liberating insight into the way that we exist. We operate under the deep-seated, unspoken assumption that somewhere inside of us, behind our eyes, and between our ears, there lives a solid, continuous, and independent entity. We think of it as the CEO in the headquarters of our mind, the permanent pilot of our boat, the unchanging soul that owns our thoughts, our feelings, and our memories. We believe this I was born, has moved through life unchanged, and will one day die. The teaching of anatta invites us to gently, and with great curiosity, go looking for this self. Let us begin this investigation right now. Where is this I? Is it your body? Look at your hands. They have changed since you were a child. The cells that compose them are constantly dying and being replaced. Your body is a process, not a static thing. Is the I your name? A name is just a label, a sound, a convenience. You have been called many things in your life: a son or daughter, a friend, a student, an employee, a lover. These are temporary roles, not a permanent essence. Well then, is the I your mind? But what is the mind? Is it your thoughts? Take a moment and observe your thoughts. They are like clouds passing in the sky, arising and vanishing in an endless stream. You cannot find a single, solid thinker behind the thoughts. Is the I your emotions? Emotions are even more fleeting, like the weather, changing from joy to sadness to boredom in the space of a single day. When we search for a solid, unchanging, independent self, it is nowhere to be found. The Buddha, in his own deep investigation, analyzed what we mistakenly call a self, and found that it is composed of 5 interconnected, constantly changing processes known in the ancient texts as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. The first is form, which is the physical body and the material world. As we have seen, this is impermanent, a flowing process made up of non-self elements like the food we have eaten, the water we have drunk, and the air we are breathing. The second is feeling. This refers to the raw sensations that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. These feelings are categorized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Like the weather, they are constantly changing based on conditions. The third is perception. This is the faculty that recognizes, labels, and interprets our feelings. It is the process that says, that is a tree, that is a beautiful melody, or that was an insulting comment. Our perceptions are deeply conditioned by our past experiences and are not a pure reflection of reality. The fourth is mental formations. This is a broad category that includes all our volitional activities, our thoughts, our habits, our opinions, our prejudices, our intentions, our desires, our aversions. This is the chattering monkey mind, the storyteller, the second arrow shooter. It is a ceaseless stream of activity, not a solid entity. The fifth is consciousness. This is the basic faculty of awareness itself, the light that knows the other four processes are happening. There is eye consciousness that knows seeing, ear consciousness that knows hearing, and mind consciousness that knows thinking. But this consciousness is not a permanent soul. It too arises dependent on conditions. It cannot exist on its own. What we call ourself, our I, is nothing more than the momentary coming together of these five flowing, interdependent processes. There is no manager behind the scenes. There is no ghost in the machine. There is only the dynamic, unfolding process itself. The metaphor of a river can help us to understand this. We stand on the bank and we point to the flowing water and say, "There is a river." The word river is a convenient label for a phenomenon. But what is it, really? A river is the riverbed, the banks, the flowing water, the fish, the plants, the reflections of the sky, all constantly changing and interacting with one another. The water you see now is not the water that was there a moment ago. As the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, "You cannot step into the same river twice." The self is exactly like this. We use the label me as a convenience, but it does not refer to a fixed, solid thing. It refers to the flowing, interdependent process of body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. The label is useful for navigating the world, but when we mistake the label for a real, permanent entity, we create endless suffering for ourselves. And this is how the deep philosophy of anatta connects directly and powerfully to the healing of our old wounds. Our most profound suffering comes from mistakenly identifying with one or more of these five fleeting processes and building a solid, permanent story around it. When we experience a painful feeling, a transient aggregate, we grasp onto it and declare, "I am a sad person." We have taken a momentary weather pattern and mistaken it for the entire sky. When we are haunted by a painful memory, a transient mental formation, we cling to it and build the identity, "I am a trauma victim," or "I am a wounded person." We have taken a single, old photograph of the river and insisted, "This picture is the river, and it will be this way forever." We take these flowing, impersonal processes and we freeze them into a solid, painful identity. We build a prison for ourselves, and the bricks of this prison are our own stories. And the mortar is our belief in a solid self, who is the star of these stories. The liberating insight of anatta is the realization that since there is no solid, permanent self, there is no one to be permanently wounded. This does not deny that wounding events happen. It does not deny that pain is real and must be treated with compassion, but it reframes the entire experience. The pain is real, but it is impersonal. The wound happened, but there is no permanent me who has to carry it as a defining scar for the rest of my life. When we see this clearly, the pain becomes just pain. The sadness becomes just sadness. The anger becomes just anger. They are seen for what they are, transient energies, impersonal weather patterns, passing through the vast, open space of awareness. This insight creates a profound sense of space and freedom. Instead of being fused with the pain, where the I and the pain are one and the same thing, a separation occurs. We are no longer the actor on the stage, lost in the drama. We become the calm, loving, and spacious audience, watching the play unfold. We shift from "I am this pain" to "I am aware of a feeling of pain arising in this body and mind." This might seem like a small shift in language, but it is a monumental shift in perspective. It is the difference between being a prisoner in a cell and being the compassionate warden who holds the keys. In this space, true healing can finally occur. The pain is no longer seen as a personal failing or a permanent stain on our being. It is just weather, and because we know it is weather, we also know, thanks to the law of anicca, that it will eventually change. We can hold the pain with the gentle, motherly compassion we have been cultivating, but without the desperate, fearful need to either fix it or to identify with it. We are finally freed from the tyranny of our own personal history. This profound insight that there is no fixed, solid self to be wounded in the first place is the ultimate liberation. It does not erase the past, but it unchains us from being its prisoner. It allows us to see our life story not as a biography of a fixed character, but as an epic and ever-changing film. And we are the screen on which it is projected, vast, open, and untouched by the drama. When we are no longer identified with our pain, when we see it as an impersonal energy passing through this process of body and mind, something truly extraordinary becomes possible. We are no longer limited to simply enduring our suffering, or even just healing it. We can begin to use it. We can learn the sacred alchemy of turning the very poison of our afflictions into the potent medicine of wisdom and boundless compassion. The journey we have taken so far has been one of profound deconstruction. We have looked courageously at our suffering, the truth of dukkha. We have investigated its cause in our own clinging and thirst, the force of tanha, and most profoundly, we have looked for the solid, separate self who is the star of this drama, and have found only a flowing, interdependent process, the truth of anatta. This realization that there is no fixed, unchanging self to be permanently wounded is the gateway to the ultimate liberation. It unchains us from the prison of our personal history. But this is not the end of the journey. It is, in fact, the beginning of a new and extraordinary stage. We are no longer just victims of our past, nor are we merely patients healing from it. We can now become alchemists. We can learn the sacred art of taking the lead of our suffering and transforming it into the purest gold of wisdom. We can learn to turn the deadliest poison into the most healing medicine. In the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, this is one of the highest teachings. It is the understanding that the cycle of suffering, which is called samsara, and the state of liberation, nirvana, are not two separate realities. The potential for nirvana is found only within the raw material of samsara. This is most beautifully expressed in the timeless metaphor of the lotus flower and the mud. The lotus is a flower of exquisite beauty, purity, and perfection. It rises above the water, its petals unstained, a universal symbol of enlightenment. The mud is dark, murky, smelly, and seemingly worthless. Our natural human instinct is to avoid the mud. We seek clean, pure, pristine environments. We want a life free from the messiness of pain, anger, grief, and fear. We want the lotus, but we reject the mud. But here lies the great secret, the profound paradox of the spiritual path. The lotus flower cannot grow on polished marble. It cannot grow on a clean, sterile surface. The lotus, in order to grow and blossom, requires the thick, dark, nutrient-rich mud. The mud is the very source of its life and its beauty. Without the mud, there can be no lotus. This simple botanical fact is a metaphor for our entire spiritual lives. The mud is our human suffering. It is our old wounds, our traumas, our insecurities, our anger, our greed, our confusion, all the difficult, messy parts of our experience that we try so hard to avoid, deny, or get rid of. The lotus is the flower of wisdom, compassion, and freedom that we all long to cultivate. The teaching, no mud, no lotus, means that we cannot find enlightenment by trying to escape our suffering. True wisdom and compassion do not come from avoiding the difficult parts of our lives. They grow directly out of them. Our pain is not an obstacle on the path. Our pain is the path. It is the very nutrient, the essential ingredient that our inner lotus needs in order to bloom. This is not simply a positive platitude. It is a radical reframing of our entire relationship with our own difficulties. So, how does this alchemy work? How do we actually turn the poison of our afflictions into the nectar, the amrita, of wisdom? The secret lies not in the poison itself, but in the quality of the container that holds it. That container is our awareness. The alchemical fire that transforms the lead into gold is a steady, mindful, and compassionate attention. When we can hold a difficult emotion or a painful memory in this warm, spacious, and non-judgmental awareness, it begins to change. Its solid, toxic form begins to break down, releasing the pure, raw energy that was trapped within it. Let us look at some of the most potent poisons we experience. Take the emotion of anger. In its raw, unconscious form, anger is a destructive poison. Combined with the story of a wronged and separate self, it becomes resentment, hatred, and violence, causing immense harm to ourselves and to others. This is the poison. But what is the raw energy of anger? It is an energy of clarity, of power, and of fierce determination. When we can hold our anger in our mindful awareness, without getting lost in the story of me and you, we can begin to separate the raw energy from the toxic narrative. When this energy is purified of ego, it transforms into the medicine of clear, discerning wisdom and powerful, compassionate action. It is the fierce energy that allows us to set clear boundaries and say no to injustice. It is the unwavering determination that drives people to protect the vulnerable and to work for a better world. It is the focused power of a mother bear protecting her cubs. The poison of destructive rage becomes the medicine of wrathful compassion. Consider the poison of fear and anxiety. In its untransformed state, fear is a paralyzing force. It floods our system, makes us small, and keeps us trapped in a prison of worry and what-ifs. But what is the raw energy of fear? It is an energy of sensitivity, of intelligence, and of deep attunement to our environment. When we can hold our fear in a compassionate embrace, instead of trying to push it away, it can become our greatest teacher. The energy of fear, when listened to wisely, transforms into the medicine of prudence, caution, and profound intuition. It tells us what we truly value and what we need to protect. It is the sensitivity that allows us to navigate complex situations with grace. The tyrant of anxiety becomes a wise and trusted advisor. What about the deep poison of grief and sadness? In its raw form, grief can feel like a bottomless pit of despair, a state of isolation that cuts us off from the world. We feel that we will drown in our own sorrow. But if we can find the courage to allow this sorrow to be present, to hold it in the vast, loving space of our heart, it performs a sacred alchemy. The experience of deep, personal loss cracks open the hard shell of the ego. It softens us, it humbles us, and it makes us profoundly aware of the preciousness of life. The poison of personal despair is transformed into the medicine of boundless empathy. Our heart, having been broken, breaks open, and it becomes large enough to hold the sorrow of the entire world. We can now connect with others in their pain on a level that was never before possible. This principle of transformation was demonstrated most powerfully in the life of one of the great meditation masters of the 20th century, Ajahn Chah of the Thai forest tradition. Ajahn Chah was renowned for his simple, direct, and humorous teachings that made the deepest aspects of the path accessible to everyone. In the final years of his life, a debilitating illness left him gradually paralyzed and eventually unable to speak or move. For most people, this would be seen as a terrible tragedy, the tragic end of a brilliant teaching career. But for a true master of the mind, it became his final, longest, and most profound sermon. Day after day, he lay on his mat, experiencing what must have been constant and often intense physical pain. His students and disciples would gather around him, and he would teach them in silence. Through his unwavering, peaceful presence, he demonstrated the ultimate application of this teaching. He showed them that he was not an ill person who was suffering. He was vast, silent awareness, watching the phenomenon of pain arise and pass away within the field of the body. He used the pain itself as his ultimate object of meditation. He looked into its nature. He understood its impermanence. He saw that it could not touch or stain the peaceful, radiant awareness that was his true nature. By doing so, he took the terrible poison of a degenerative disease and transformed it, moment by moment, into the living nectar of a teaching on freedom. He proved, with his own body, that liberation is not found in having a life free from pain, but in our relationship to the pain we are given. His silent, paralyzed years were his most eloquent teaching on the power of the mind to transform suffering into peace. So how can we, who are not yet great masters, begin to practice this sacred alchemy in our own lives? The first step is to fundamentally change our attitude toward our difficulties. When a painful emotion or a difficult situation arises, our habit is to see it as an enemy to be fought, an obstacle to be overcome, or a mistake to be fixed. The alchemical practice invites us to see it instead as a teacher, or as the great Sufi poet Rumi suggested, as a guest from the beyond. We can learn to greet our pain with a certain hospitality. We can ask it, "What have you come to teach me?" instead of the victim's cry, "Why is this happening to me?" We can ask the student's question, "What is the lesson for me in this?" Perhaps a situation of deep frustration is here to teach you the art of letting go. Perhaps a feeling of loneliness is here to teach you to find a source of strength and comfort within yourself. We can also apply this practice retrospectively to our old wounds. We can look back at the mud of our most difficult life experiences and search for the nutrients. We can ask ourselves, what strength was born from that suffering? What wisdom did I gain from that fire? Perhaps a painful betrayal taught you the true value of loyalty and made you a more trustworthy person. Perhaps a period of failure taught you humility and the importance of perseverance. Perhaps the experience of being judged taught you to be less judgmental of others. This is not about creating a falsely positive story or denying the reality of the pain. It is about honoring the whole of the experience. It is acknowledging the mud while also recognizing the beautiful lotus that could not have grown without it. It is the act of consciously extracting the wisdom that was forged in the very heart of the fire. This sacred alchemy, this courageous and compassionate turning of our deepest poisons into our most profound medicines, fills the heart with a quiet strength and a boundless empathy. When you have learned to hold your own suffering with such transformative, unconditional love, a beautiful and natural impulse arises within you. You no longer wish only for your own liberation from pain. You feel an overflowing and heartfelt desire for all beings, without exception, to find this same peace and freedom. The compassion that you have so patiently cultivated for yourself begins to radiate outwards, seeking to touch the entire world. This is the natural birth of what is known in the Buddhist tradition as metta, or loving kindness, the next great flowering in the ever-unfolding garden of the heart. The sacred alchemy of turning our suffering into wisdom fills the heart with a quiet strength and a boundless empathy. When you have learned to hold your own pain with such transformative and unconditional love, a beautiful and natural impulse arises. The heart, once softened and opened, no longer wishes only for its own peace. It begins to overflow. It feels a deep and sincere desire for all beings, without exception, to be free from their suffering. The compassion, the karuna, that you have so patiently cultivated for yourself wants to radiate outwards, touching the entire world with its warmth. This natural overflowing of the heart is the birth of what is known in the Buddhist tradition as metta. It is the practice of loving kindness. Metta is like the light of the sun. The sun does not choose who or what it shines upon. It shines equally on the beautiful flower and the stubborn weed, on the saint and the sinner, on the palace and the prison. It simply radiates its warmth, offering its life-giving energy without condition or discrimination. Metta is the cultivation of this same quality in our own heart. But it is crucial to understand what metta is not. It is not an attempt to force a sentimental or romantic feeling. It is not a denial of difficulty or a pretense that you suddenly like everyone. To try and force a feeling of love for someone you find difficult is inauthentic, and it will only lead to frustration and a sense of failure. Metta is a bhavana, a word that means cultivation or development. It is the patient and steady cultivation of an intention. It is the sincere and heartfelt wish for the well-being of yourself and others. It is more like setting a compass in a certain direction than it is like trying to conjure a specific weather pattern. You may not always feel loving, but you can always, in any moment, set the compass of your heart towards the direction of kindness. This is a practice that is available to us at all times, regardless of our emotional state. The practice of metta meditation always begins in the same place, with ourselves. Just as you cannot offer a thirsty person water from an empty cup, you cannot genuinely offer loving kindness to others if your own heart is a desert of self-criticism and ill will. The journey of radiating outwards must begin from a stable, loving center. For those of us who carry old wounds, this is often the most challenging step of all. The moment we try to offer ourselves kindness, the inner critic, that harsh and relentless voice of our past conditioning, immediately objects. It whispers, "You don't deserve this. It is selfish. You are flawed and unworthy of love." This voice is the echo of our old pain. The practice of metta asks us to acknowledge this voice with kindness, as we might acknowledge a troubled and confused guest, and then gently ask it to step aside, just for a few moments, so we can begin this healing work. So, let us begin. Find a comfortable posture, and if you wish, you can place a hand gently over the center of your chest as a gesture of warmth and tenderness towards yourself. Bring your awareness to your heart space, and silently, gently, begin to offer yourself a series of intentions. These are not affirmations you must force yourself to believe, but simply gifts you are offering to your own heart. With each inhalation and exhalation, you can repeat these phrases. May I be safe. This is a wish for protection from all inner and outer harm, a wish to be safe from the judgment of others, and even more so, from the harshness of your own self-criticism. May I be healthy. This is a wish for the well-being of your body and your mind, a wish for strength, vitality, and a mind that is clear and at peace. May I be happy. This is a wish for a deep and authentic happiness, the happiness that comes from a peaceful heart, not just from fleeting pleasures, a wish for a mind filled with ease and contentment. May I live with ease. This is a wish for freedom from struggle, a wish that you may navigate the difficulties of life with grace, patience, and wisdom. Continue to repeat these phrases gently, allowing the intention behind the words to soak into your being like a gentle spring rain. Do not worry if you feel nothing special. Simply resting in this intention is the practice itself. Once you have established some sense of this warm, kind intention for yourself, the next stage is to extend it outwards. Bring to mind a person who is very easy to love. This might be a dear friend, a beloved teacher or mentor, a family member, or even a cherished pet. Someone whose very presence brings a natural smile to your face and warmth to your heart. Picture this being in your mind's eye as clearly as you can. See them smiling, happy, and well. And now, direct the full force of your loving intention towards them, using the same phrases. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Feel the natural, easy flow of kindness from your heart to theirs. This stage helps to amplify the feeling of metta, making it stronger and more stable. Next, we expand the circle of kindness even further. Bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you have no strong feelings, positive or negative. It could be the cashier at your local grocery store, the person who delivers your mail, a neighbor you see but don't know well. We so often walk through the world seeing such people not as fully realized human beings, but as mere functions or obstacles. This practice is an antidote to that indifference. Bring the face of this neutral person to your mind and recognize that just like you, they too wish to be happy. Just like you, they too have their own struggles and sorrows. And with this recognition, offer them the same sincere wishes. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. This stage is a powerful training in seeing the shared humanity in everyone we meet. Now we arrive at the most challenging and perhaps the most transformative stage of the practice. The invitation is to bring to mind a difficult person. It is wise to start with someone who is only mildly irritating or challenging, not the source of your deepest trauma. If at any point this practice feels overwhelming, please be kind to yourself and return your attention to yourself or to your loved one. Remember, this practice is for your freedom. Holding on to hatred, anger, or resentment towards someone is like carrying a burning coal in your own heart, hoping that they will get burned. The only person who is consistently harmed by your resentment is you. So, as an act of profound self-liberation, you bring this difficult person to mind. You acknowledge whatever difficult feelings arise within you, the anger, the hurt, the resentment. You hold these feelings of yours with compassion, and then, to the best of your ability, you try to extend the phrases of metta. May you be safe. May you be happy. If these phrases feel impossible, you can modify them. You might try, to the best of my ability in this moment, I wish you well. Or you could offer this powerful intention. May you be free from the suffering that causes you to inflict suffering on others. This transforms the practice into a wish for their healing, which is often more accessible than a direct wish for their happiness. The power of metta to disarm hatred is not merely a psychological concept. It is a force of nature. In the stories of the Buddha's life, there is a famous account of his jealous cousin, Devadatta, who plotted to assassinate him. Devadatta arranged for the fiercest elephant in the kingdom, an animal named Nalagiri, to be intoxicated and enraged, and then set loose on the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. When the people saw the raging elephant charging towards them, trumpeting and destroying everything in its path, they screamed and ran for their lives. The Buddha's own disciples, terrified, urged him to flee, but the Buddha stood his ground. He did not prepare to fight, nor did he run away. He simply stood still, looked at the enraged animal with eyes of complete serenity, and radiated a powerful, unwavering, and palpable field of pure metta. As the charging elephant entered this powerful field of loving kindness, a miracle occurred. Its frantic rage began to dissolve. Its charge slowed to a walk. The fire in its eyes softened. It approached the Buddha, knelt down before him as if in reverence, and allowed the Buddha to gently stroke its forehead. The deadly poison of hatred was completely neutralized by the boundless nectar of love. This story teaches us that metta is not a weak or passive state. It is a form of spiritual power, a quiet strength that can disarm the greatest aggression, both within ourselves and in the world. A regular practice of metta meditation, slowly but surely, transforms the landscape of the heart. It is like a steady, gentle rain falling on the hard, dry, compacted soil of a heart that has been closed down by years of pain, fear, and resentment. It softens the ground. It breaks down the walls of isolation we have built around ourselves. It dissolves the illusion of us versus them and reveals our deep and unbreakable interconnection with all of life. It is the ultimate antidote to the poisons of ill will, bitterness, and loneliness. This courageous practice of extending loving kindness, even to those who have caused us harm, is a profound act of self-liberation, a way of finally putting down the burning coal. However, the heart may still hold back. There may be a part of us that says, I cannot truly wish them well. I cannot move on until the injustice has been acknowledged, until the wound has been truly dealt with. This feeling is natural. It is an honorable feeling that points directly to a necessary and beautiful gateway we must pass through on our journey of healing. In order to truly radiate unconditional love and to finally set ourselves free from the chains of the past, we must first learn the healing, courageous, and deeply misunderstood art of forgiveness. The courageous practice of metta, of extending loving kindness outwards, naturally reveals the places in our heart that are still closed. When we attempt to send this warmth to a person who has caused us deep pain, we may feel a block, a resistance. A voice of justice and integrity within us might say, I cannot wish them well. Not yet. The wound is too deep, the injustice too great. This is not a sign of failure. This is an important and honest signal from the heart. It is pointing directly to a sacred and necessary gateway we must pass through to find true freedom. Before the heart can radiate unconditional love, it must first be unburdened from the heavy chains of the past. This is the healing, courageous, and profoundly misunderstood art of forgiveness. Perhaps no spiritual concept is more fraught with misunderstanding than forgiveness. We often see it as an act of weakness, a condoning of a harmful act, or a betrayal of our own pain. We believe that to forgive is to say, what you did was okay. Let us be unequivocally clear from the outset. Forgiveness does not mean you are saying what happened was okay. It was not okay. It does not mean you must forget what happened. The scars we carry often hold important lessons, and to forget them would be unwise. Forgiveness does not even mean you must reconcile with the person who harmed you. If a person is still a source of harm, maintaining distance is an act of profound self-respect. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to the other person. It is the ultimate gift you give to yourself. The other person may never know you have forgiven them. They may not care. They may have forgotten the incident entirely. The act of forgiveness is a purely internal process. It is the decision to no longer allow another person's past actions to control your present peace. It is the act of finally setting yourself free. To hold on to unforgiveness, to live in a state of resentment, bitterness, and hatredus, as the famous saying goes, like drinking a daily dose of poison and hoping that the other person will die. The only person who is consistently harmed by the poison of your resentment is you. This is not just a metaphor, it is a physiological and psychological reality. When we live in a state of unforgiveness, our bodies are marinated in a low-grade broth of stress hormone. We are constantly reactivating our fight-or-flight response by replaying the painful event in our minds. This drains our vital energy, weakens our immune system, and clouds our perception of the present moment. It keeps the old wound perpetually open, raw, and infected with the second, third, and fourth arrows of our own making. Unforgiveness chains you to the very person you wish to be free from. You give them power over your emotional state, long after the harmful event has passed. Imagine a traveler on a long and beautiful journey. But this traveler is not walking upright and free. They are bent over, struggling under the weight of a huge, heavy sack on their back. Their faces etched with exhaustion and pain, A wise person meets them on the path and asks, "My friend, the journey is long. Why do you choose to carry such a heavy burden?" The traveler stops, breathing heavily, and says, "This sack is filled with rocks. Each rock is a grudge I carry against someone who wronged me. He might reach in and pull one out. This large, jagged one is for the business partner who cheated me. This heavy, grey one is for the friend who betrayed my trust. This sharp-edged one is for the parent who never saw my worth." The wise person listens with compassion and then asks a simple question. They hurt you in the past, and that is a great sorrow. But why do you choose to continue carrying the weight of their mistakes with you every single step of your journey? The traveler is stunned into silence. He had never thought of it as a choice. He believed that carrying these rocks was his duty, a testament to the wrongs he had endured. The wise person continues, "The path ahead is filled with beauty and joy, but you will never be able to lift your head to see it as long as you are crushed by the weight of that sack. The power to put it down lies only with you." The traveler looks at the path ahead, then looks at the heavy sack that has been his constant companion for so long. With a sense of trepidation, but also a glimmer of hope, he unties the rope and lets the sack fall to the ground. The rocks tumble out with a loud crash, and for the first time in years, the traveler stands up straight. He feels a lightness in his body and a freedom in his heart that he had long forgotten was possible. This is forgiveness. It is the conscious decision to put down the sack of rocks, not because the people who gave them to you deserve it, but because you deserve to walk freely and lightly on your path. It is essential to understand that forgiveness is almost never a single event. It is not a courthouse where you bang a gavel and declare the case closed forever. Forgiveness is a process, often a slow and gradual one. It is more like the melting of a great glacier than the flipping of a switch. There will be days when you feel a sense of release, and there will be days when you wake up and find you have unconsciously picked up one of the rocks again. The practice is not to berate yourself for this, but to simply notice, with compassion, I am carrying that rock again. And then, with a gentle and firm intention, you decide to put it down once more. Each time you do this, your grip on the grievance becomes a little looser. Each time, you are strengthening the habit of freedom over the habit of bondage. This process requires immense patience and the same motherly compassion, the karuna, that we have been cultivating for ourselves. You must be willing to give your own heart the time it needs to heal. And this brings us to the most important and often the most difficult part of this journey, forgiving ourselves. Often, the heaviest and most jagged rock in our sack is the grudge we hold against a past version of ourselves. We blame ourselves for not being wiser, for not being stronger, for not seeing the danger signs. We chastise ourselves for staying in a harmful situation for too long, for not speaking up for ourselves, for the mistakes we made that hurt others or ourselves. This endless cycle of self-recrimination and guilt is the deepest poison of all. It is the ultimate act of shooting the second arrow. The path to self-forgiveness is to turn the same logic of compassion inward. You must see that the person you were in the past, the person who made that mistake or who failed to act, was doing the very best they could with the knowledge, the resources, the emotional maturity, and the level of consciousness they possessed at that time. To judge your past self by the standards of the wisdom you possess today is profoundly unfair. It is like scolding a first grader for not being able to solve an advanced algebra problem. Of course they couldn't. They didn't have the tools yet. You did not have the tools then that you have now. So, in a quiet moment, practice extending this grace to yourself. Bring to mind that version of you that you have been holding in contempt. See that younger self doing their best, fumbling, perhaps making a mess of things. See their own pain, their own confusion, and offer them the gift you so freely offer to others. You can whisper to this past self, "I see you. I understand you were doing the best you could. I forgive you for not knowing then what I know now. I release you from this burden of my judgment. This act of self-forgiveness is the key that unlocks the deepest shackle. It is the final rock tumbling from the sack, leaving you truly light and free. This profound act of forgiveness, extended both outwards to others and inwards to ourselves, is what truly unchains us from the past. It does not change what happened, but it completely and utterly transforms our present. When we are no longer weighed down by the heavy rocks of old grievances and self-recrimination, our hearts become lighter. Our minds become quieter. We are no longer haunted by the noisy ghosts of yesterday's battles. And with this newfound inner quiet, with this spaciousness in the heart, we discover an incredible and precious ability, the capacity to find a deep and abiding silence, even when the world around us is filled with chaos and noise. The profound act of forgiveness, extended both outwards to those who have harmed us and inwards to our own past selves, is what truly unchains us from the past. It is the conscious and courageous decision to put down the heavy sack of grievances and walk on, light and free. When we do this, a new kind of silence begins to emerge in the landscape of the mind. The noisy ghosts of yesterday's battles, the endless inner arguments and resentments, begin to fade. We are no longer haunted, but we immediately face a new challenge. We may have quieted the inner noise, but we still live in an outer world that is anything but silent. Our lives are filled with the clamor of traffic, the constant ping of notifications, the demands of work, and the complexities of relationships. We often believe that to find the inner peace we have just tasted, we must escape this outer noise. We dream of a silent retreat on a distant mountaintop, believing that peace can only be found in a place where there is no sound. But this is a profound misunderstanding. The ultimate practice is not to run from the noise of the world, but to find the monastery within the metropolis. It is the art of finding a deep and abiding silence in the very heart of the noise. This requires us to first redefine our idea of practice. For many, meditation is something that happens for 20 minutes in the morning on a special cushion in a quiet room. We strive to make this a habit, and when we fail to do it, we feel a sense of guilt, as if we have failed at our spiritual task. But the cushion is only the training ground. It is the dojo where we develop our spiritual muscles. Daily life, with all its messiness and unpredictability, is the real event. The purpose of meditating on a cushion is not to get good at meditating. The purpose is to get good at living. The goal is to bring the qualities we cultivate in the quiet of the morning, the mindfulness, the stillness, the compassionate awareness, into the chaos of the afternoon. The true measure of our practice is not how still we can be in a silent room, but how gracefully we can navigate a traffic jam, a difficult conversation, or a stressful workday. The healing we have been cultivating does not just happen on the cushion. It finds its true expression in every mundane moment of our ordinary lives. This is the art of informal practice. It is about weaving moments of mindfulness into the very fabric of our day. One of the most accessible ways to do this is through walking meditation. This does not mean you have to walk in a slow or strange way that draws attention to yourself. It simply means that as you are walking, whether it is from your car to your office, down a grocery store aisle, or simply from one room of your house to another, you bring your attention to the physical sensations of walking. Feel the solid contact of your feet on the ground. Notice the subtle shift of weight from one leg to the other. Feel the movement of the air on your skin. The simple act of walking, something we do every day without any thought, can become a powerful anchor for your awareness, constantly bringing you back from the labyrinth of your thoughts into the simple, solid reality of the present moment. We can apply this same principle to eating. Most of us eat mindlessly, consuming our food while watching a screen, working, or lost in thought. We taste almost nothing. Eating meditation is a radical act of presence. You can try it with a single meal, or even just the first few bites of a meal. Before you eat, take a moment to look at your food. Notice its colors, its shapes, its textures. Take a moment to smell its aroma. Then, when you take a bite, chew slowly. Try to identify the different flavors. Notice the texture in your mouth. This simple practice transforms the mundane act of eating into a rich, sensory experience, a meditation on gratitude for the nourishment that the earth provides. In the Zen tradition, even daily chores are seen as a profound form of practice. The great master Thich Nhat Hanh spoke often of dishwashing meditation. The goal, he said, is to wash the dishes in order to wash the dishes, not just to get them over with, so you can move on to the next thing, like drinking a cup of tea. If you are rushing through the dishes, you are not truly alive during that time. But if you can bring your full attention to the task, it can become a moment of peace. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. See the iridescent beauty of the soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the water and the gentle clinking of the plates. You can be completely, peacefully present. This applies to any chore: folding laundry, feeling the texture of the cloth, sweeping the floor, watching the dust gather, taking out the trash. Any activity, no matter how humble, when done with wholehearted, non-judgmental attention, becomes a sacred act. It becomes a training in being here, now. Beyond transforming our routine activities, we can also intentionally create small islands of peace throughout our day. Our lives are often a relentless stream of activity, but we can intentionally insert moments of spiritual punctuation. You can use routine events as a trigger to pause. For example, you can make a resolution that every time your phone rings, you will let it ring twice before you answer, and use those 2 rings as a chance to take one conscious breath. Before you start your car, pause for just a moment to feel your hands on the steering wheel. When you stop at a red light, instead of feeling impatient, use it as a gift of 30 seconds to simply breathe and feel your body sitting in the seat. These are micro-meditations, tiny sanctuaries of stillness that you can sprinkle throughout even the busiest of days. A single, conscious sip of your morning tea can be a profound practice. Instead of gulping it down while reading emails, take just 1 minute. Hold the cup and feel its warmth. See the steam rising. Smell the fragrance. Then take a sip and truly taste it. This 1 minute can reset your entire nervous system and change the tone of your whole day. This leads us to a deeper understanding of what silence and peace truly are. There is a wonderful story about a king who held a great contest for all the artists in his kingdom. He offered a vast prize for the artist who could paint the most perfect picture of peace. Many artists tried. Some painted a calm, mirror-like lake, perfectly reflecting serene, snow-capped mountains. Others painted a quiet, sun-dappled forest, with no sign of even a single animal to disturb the tranquility. Still others painted a silent desert at twilight under a canopy of stars. These were all beautiful paintings, and they represented what most of us think of as peace, the complete absence of noise, movement, and conflict. The king looked at all of these paintings, but he chose one that shocked everyone. The painting he chose depicted a huge, roaring, tumultuous waterfall, crashing down over jagged rocks with immense power. The water was a chaotic swirl of white foam, and a stormy sky with flashes of lightning could be seen in the background. It seemed to be the very opposite of peace. The other artists were confused and asked the king why he had chosen such a violent and noisy scene. The king, smiling, pointed to a tiny detail in the painting that most had overlooked. There, behind the deafening curtain of the raging waterfall, tucked into a small crevice in the rock, was a small mother bird, sitting on her nest. She was surrounded by the thunderous roar and the violent spray, yet she was resting in perfect stillness, peacefully tending to her young. This, declared the king, is the truest picture of peace. For peace is not a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. Peace is to be in the midst of all those things and still be calm in your heart. This is the goal of our practice. This is the silence we are seeking. True silence is not the absence of external sound. You can be in a sensory deprivation tank and be utterly tormented by the deafening noise of your own anxious mind. Conversely, you can be on a noisy city street, surrounded by the sounds of traffic and crowds, and feel a deep and unshakable inner stillness. The silence we are cultivating is the silence of the mind. It is the quieting of the inner narrator, the cessation of the second arrow. It is the spaciousness that opens up when we are no longer at war with reality. The informal practices, walking, eating, washing the dishes with attention, and the creation of small islands of peace are the ways we build this inner sanctuary. They are how we learn to build our nest behind the waterfall. This is a peace that becomes portable. It is not dependent on a quiet room or a perfect life. It is a peace we can carry within us everywhere we go, a self-generated refuge that is always available, no matter how loudly the storms of the world may rage. This capacity to find a sanctuary of silence within the heart of life's chaos is a profound achievement. It brings a deep stability and a quiet resilience to our lives. When we are able to rest in this inner stillness, we become less reactive. We are no longer so easily thrown off balance by the constant ups and downs of the world, the praise and the blame, the gain and the loss, the moments of joy and the moments of sorrow. They all still happen. The weather of life continues to change, but we are no longer a small, rudderless boat tossed about by every wave. We have found our anchor in a deep and profound stillness. We develop a new kind of spiritual posture, an unshakable balance of the heart. This noble and serene peace, this ability to remain balanced amidst the shifting winds of life, is the quality of equanimity, known in the ancient texts as upekkha. The capacity to find a sanctuary of silence within the heart of life's chaos is a profound achievement, bringing a deep stability and resilience to our lives. When we can rest in this inner stillness, our relationship to the world begins to fundamentally change. We are no longer a small boat being tossed about by every wave. We have found our anchor. From this place of stability, an even more refined and noble quality of the heart can emerge. It is a quality that allows us to face all of life's changing circumstances with a serene and unshakable balance. In the ancient teachings, this is known as upekkha, the sublime state of equanimity. Upekkha is the last of the 4 divine abodes, or Brahmaviharas, which include loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, and sympathetic joy, mudita. Equanimity is often considered the crown jewel of these 4, as it is the quality that holds and balances all the others. However, like forgiveness, equanimity is widely misunderstood. We often confuse it with its near enemy, indifference. We might imagine an equanimous person as someone who is cold, aloof, uncaring, and emotionally detached. But this is not equanimity at all. Indifference is born from fear, aversion, and a closed heart. It is a defense mechanism that says, I won't let myself care, so I cannot be hurt. Equanimity, on the other hand, is born from wisdom, courage, and a radically open heart. Indifference is a stony, impenetrable wall. Equanimity is a vast, open, and spacious sky that has room for everything. It is the ability to care deeply, to love fully, and to engage with the world wholeheartedly. but without being attached to the outcome. It is the quiet, mountain-like strength that allows us to keep our heart open to both joy and sorrow, to pleasure and pain, to success and failure. The practical ground for cultivating equanimity is in how we relate to the 8 worldly winds, 4 pairs of opposites that are constantly blowing through our lives, threatening to knock us off balance. The first pair is pleasure and pain. A life without equanimity is a frantic chase after pleasure and a desperate flight from pain. Our happiness is entirely conditional on feeling pleasant sensations. The second pair is gain and loss. We feel elated and successful when we gain money, property, or reputation. We feel devastated and defeated when we lose them. The third pair is praise and blame. We become inflated and arrogant when people praise us, and we feel crushed and worthless when they criticize or blame us. The fourth pair is fame and disrepute. We crave recognition and a good reputation, and we live in fear of being unknown, disliked, or spoken of poorly. A life lived at the mercy of these 8 winds is an exhausting and unstable existence. Our inner peace is entirely dependent on external circumstances we cannot control. We are a leaf blown about by every changing breeze. The practice of upekkha is the cultivation of a deep inner balance that is not shaken by these winds. It is not that we no longer feel pleasure or pain, or that we don't care about gain or loss. We still feel them, but they no longer own us. We experience them within a larger field of peaceful awareness. We become less like a leaf and more like a great, ancient mountain. The winds of praise may blow, and the mountain remains still. The storms of blame and loss may rage, and the mountain remains unmoved, majestic and serene in its own being. The ultimate story of equanimity is the story of the Buddha's night of enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. This was not a peaceful, quiet meditation. It was a cosmic battle for the soul. As the Buddha sat in deep concentration, the tempter, the lord of illusion, known as Mara, launched an all-out assault to prevent his awakening. Mara represents all the forces of our own minds that keep us trapped in suffering. First, Mara tried to lure him away with the winds of pleasure and desire. He sent his 3 beautiful daughters personifications of craving, aversion, and discontento dance before the Buddha and seduce him with promises of sensual delight. The Buddha, resting in perfect equanimity, remained completely unmoved. They could find no foothold in his serene mind. Failing this, Mara turned to the winds of pain and fear. He summoned vast, terrifying armies of demons who attacked the Buddha with a storm of deadly weapons. They hurled spears, arrows, fire, and giant rocks at his calm, seated form. This represents the assault of our own inner demons, our deepest fears, our rage, our self-doubt, our painful memories, and our old wounds. But a miracle occurred. As these terrifying weapons flew through the air towards the Buddha, his field of serene equanimity was so powerful that it performed a sacred alchemy. The sharp arrows, the burning coals, the jagged rocks, they all transformed in mid-air and fell harmlessly at his feet as a shower of fragrant, beautiful flower petals. His peace was so profound that it had the power to disarm all hatred and fear, transforming their violent energy into beauty. Finally, Mara made one last, desperate appeal to the ego. He challenged the Buddha's right to awaken, screaming, "You are not worthy of this enlightenment. Who will bear witness to your spiritual attainment?" The Buddha did not engage in an argument. He did not defend his ego. Instead, resting in perfect, silent equanimity, he simply reached down and touched the ground with the fingertips of his right hand. This simple gesture was a call to the earth itself to be his witness, and the stories say that the earth roared its assent, shaking and trembling, bearing witness to the Buddha's eons of patient practice. Mara and his armies, completely defeated, vanished like the morning mist. The Buddha sat alone in the deep stillness, and as the morning star rose in the sky, he awakened. The faint, knowing, serene smile that is so often depicted on the face of the Buddha is the very smile of upekkha. It is the smile of one who has faced every temptation and every terror of the mind and has remained balanced, peaceful, and free. It is the smile of one who has touched the unshakable ground of being. How do we cultivate this mountain-like stability in our own lives? Upekkha is not a separate practice, but the beautiful and natural fruit that grows from the deep roots of the other wisdoms we have been cultivating. It rests, first and foremost, on a deep, experiential understanding of impermanence, anicca. When you truly know, in your bones, that pleasure and pain, praise and blame, gain and loss are all temporary, fleeting phenomena, you naturally stop clinging to them so tightly. Why become overly attached to a pleasant feeling when you know it will inevitably change? Why fall into despair over a painful feeling when you know it too shall pass? This deep wisdom about the nature of reality is the primary foundation of a balanced heart. Secondly, equanimity is supported by a wise understanding of karma, the law of cause and effect. We come to see that we are the owners of our own actions and intentions, but we are not in control of the outcomes, nor are we in control of the actions and choices of others. We learn to do our best, to plant wholesome seeds of kindness and integrity, and then we learn to let go of the results. We recognize that other people are the heirs of their own karma. We can offer our love, our help, and our compassion, but we cannot save them from the consequences of their own choices. This understanding prevents us from being crushed by a sense of false responsibility, and it protects us from the burnout and compassion fatigue that can come from being overly attached to helping others. And finally, the deepest foundation for equanimity is the wisdom of no self, anatta. When we truly see that there is no solid, separate I to be the target of praise or blame, we naturally take things less personally. The 8 worldly winds still blow, but now they blow through a wide open, spacious field, rather than crashing against the solid wall of a fragile ego. When someone praises us, we can enjoy it without becoming inflated, because we know there is no solid self to puff up. When someone blames us, we can hear their words without being devastated, because we know there is no solid self to be wounded. This is the ultimate source of our freedom. To practice equanimity is to learn to relate to our lives like a loving grandparent watching their grandchild learn to walk. The grandparent is fully present, their heart overflowing with love and encouragement. They delight in the child's successes, but they also know, with a deep wisdom, that the child will stumble, the child will fall. This is a necessary and unavoidable part of the learning process. The wise grandparent does not rush in to prevent every single fall. They do not panic every time the child wobbles. They hold the entire process, the successes and the failures, the steps forward and the stumbles in a vast, spacious and trusting embrace. This wise, loving and balanced presence is upekkha. This state of serene balance allows us to look upon the world with new eyes. When our vision is no longer clouded by the storms of our personal reactivity, by our desperate clinging to pleasure and our fearful aversion to pain, we begin to see things as they truly are. We begin to see past the superficial separations of me and you, of self and other, of my pain and your pain. In this clear, calm, and equanimous light, the profound and intricate web of connection that binds all of life together becomes stunningly apparent. We begin to understand, not just as an idea, but as a direct experience, that we are not separate waves fighting the ocean. We are, and always have been, expressions of the one single ocean. This is the deep and healing wisdom of interbeing. The state of serene balance we call equanimity, or upeka, allows us to look at the world with new and unclouded eyes. When we are no longer buffeted by the winds of our own reactivity, when our vision is no longer distorted by our desperate clinging to pleasure and our fearful aversion to pain, we begin to see things as they truly are. And what we see in this clear, calm light is perhaps the most radical, beautiful, and healing truth of all. We see that the deep-seated belief in our own separation is a profound illusion. We see past the superficial boundaries of me and you, of self and other, and we begin to perceive the intricate and unbreakable web of connection that joins all of life together. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh coined a beautiful word for this reality: interbeing. To understand interbeing is to move beyond the insight of no self to the even more inclusive insight of everything, self. It is the realization that nothing in this universe can exist by itself. Everything and everyone is made up entirely of non-self elements. A thing can only interbe with all other things. This may sound like an abstract philosophical concept, but it is a simple, observable reality. Let us practice looking deeply, using the Zen master's own famous contemplation. Let us look at a simple sheet of paper. On the surface, it is just a sheet of paper. But if we look with the eyes of interbeing, what do we see? First, we can see a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. This is not a poetic flight of fancy. It is a reality. Without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. Therefore, the cloud is an essential, non-paper element that is fully present in the paper. If we look more deeply, we can see the sunshine. The sunshine is crucial for the tree's photosynthesis, the process by which it grows strong. Without the sun, the tree cannot exist, and so the paper cannot exist. The sunshine is in the paper. Continuing our contemplation, we can see the logger who cut down the tree. We can see his hands, his sweat, his breath. We can see his parents who gave him life. We can see the wheat that made the bread he ate for breakfast, which gave him the energy to do his work. We can see the farmer who grew the wheat, the soil, the rain, and the sun that nourished it. We can see the factory worker who operated the paper mill, the truck driver who transported the paper, and the shopkeeper who sold it. All of these people and all of these elements are present, right here, in this simple sheet of paper. If we were to return any one of these elements to its source, if we were to give the cloud back to the sky, the sunshine back to the sun, the logger back to their parents, this sheet of paper, in this moment, could not exist. It is empty of a separate, independent self, but it is full of the entire cosmos. To be is to interbe. Now, let us turn this profound gaze of contemplation upon ourselves. Look at your own hand. This hand, which you call mine, is not just your hand. In it, you can see your mother and your father and their parents and all of your ancestors stretching back through time. Their DNA, their choices, their struggles, and their triumphs are present in the very cells of your body. The food that you ate for your last meal is in your hand, giving it energy. That food contains the sun, the rain, the soil, and the work of countless farmers and laborers. The air you are breathing at this very moment is becoming a part of you. You are breathing in what the trees have breathed out, and the trees are breathing in what you have breathed out. You are in a constant, intimate dialogue with the world around you. Let us look even more deeply at our own mind, at our own consciousness. Your thoughts, your ideas, your language, are they truly yours? Or can you see your teachers, your friends, the authors of the books you have read, the creators of the films you have watched, the entire culture that has shaped your understanding of the world. Our consciousness is not a private, sealed-off chamber. It is a meeting place for countless streams of influence, and most importantly for our journey of healing. Let us look with the eyes of interbeing at our own pain, at our oldest wound. Is it truly my pain? When we look deeply, we can see that our pain is also not a separate, personal possession. In our anxiety, we can see the anxiety of our parents, who may have lived through difficult times and passed on their own unresolved fears to us, not out of malice, but out of unconscious habit. In our anger, we can see the anger of a society that may be structured in unjust ways. In our feelings of inadequacy, we can see the conditioning of a culture that constantly tells us we are not enough. Our pain is a legacy, a river that has flowed through generations and through our society, and it is simply passing through us. To see this is not to abdicate personal responsibility for our own healing. Rather, it is to relieve ourselves of the terrible, isolating burden of shame. It shifts the question from, "What is wrong with me?" to, "What is this energy that is passing through me, and how can I transform it?" There is a magnificent and ancient metaphor from the Buddhist scriptures that helps to visualize this cosmic reality. It is the image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast, infinite net that stretches in all directions throughout the entire universe. At every single node where the threads of this net cross, there hangs a single, brilliant, perfectly polished jewel. The most miraculous quality of this net is that if you look closely into the polished surface of any one jewel, you will see reflected in it, with perfect clarity, every other jewel in the entire net. And within each of those infinite reflections, you will see all the other jewels reflected again, and so on, ad infinitum. Each jewel represents a single being, a single event, a single particle of existence. Each jewel has its own unique place and perspective, yet its entire existence is defined by and contains all the others. It is both an individual and the whole. To touch one jewel is to make the entire net shimmer. This is the truth of our existence. You are a single, unique jewel, but you contain the entire universe, and the entire universe contains you. The moment we begin to experience this truth, not just as an idea, but as a felt reality, our lives are transformed. First, the profound existential loneliness that haunts modern society begins to dissolve. How can we truly be lonely when we are so intimately connected with everything? How can we feel separate when we know that the cloud, the sun, the tree, and our ancestors are all breathing with our own breath? The illusion of being a separate, isolated island vanishes, and we discover we are a vital and inseparable part of the great continent of life. From this realization, true compassion and loving kindness arise effortlessly. They are no longer a discipline we must practice, but the natural, spontaneous response of a heart that knows it is not separate. To harm another being is, in a very real sense, to harm ourselves, for their jewel is reflected in ours. To help another, to rejoice in their happiness, is to help ourselves, for their light adds to the brilliance of our own reflection. The distinction between self-care and other care dissolves. All acts of kindness become acts of universal healing. And this leads to the final, empowering implication of interbeing. Healing your own wound is not a selfish act. It is, in fact, the most profound and effective form of social and planetary action you can take. We are all jewels in Indra's net. When we, through our practice, work to heal the anger, the resentment, the greed, and the trauma within ourselves, we are polishing our own jewel. As our jewel becomes clearer, more radiant, and more peaceful, it sends more light to every other jewel in the net. It changes the quality of the entire web. By healing yourself, you are healing the legacy of your ancestors. By healing yourself, you offer a more peaceful presence to your family, your community, and the world. Your personal healing is a gift to the cosmos. This vast, liberating view of interbeing, where the personal and the universal merge into a single, seamless reality, brings us to the final stages of our inner journey. We see that our life, with its unique pattern of struggles and triumphs, is a single jewel in Indra's net, reflecting and being reflected by all of existence. We can now look back at our entire path, muddy patches we have walked through, the beautiful flowers we have cultivated, the stumbles we have taken, and the moments of grace we have received, and we can see it all as part of a perfect, complete, and interconnected whole. This leads us to the symbol that in Zen Buddhism represents this very realization, the beauty of completion, the acceptance of our own imperfect perfection. This is the Zen circle, the Enso, this vast and liberating view of interbeing, where our personal story merges with the story of the cosmos, where our individual jewel reflects and is reflected by all of existence, brings us to the final stages of our inner journey. We begin to see our life not as a fragmented series of disconnected events, but as a single, unified, and unfolding whole. We look back at the path we have traveled, the dark mud of our suffering, the beautiful flowers of our joy, the stumbles of our failures, and the quiet moments of grace, and we can finally see it all as part of a perfect, complete tapestry. In the tradition of Zen Buddhism, there is a symbol that perfectly expresses this profound realization. It is a symbol of wholeness, of enlightenment, and of the elegant simplicity that lies on the other side of complexity. It is the Zen circle, the Enso. Visually, the Enso is simplicity itself. It is a circle, hand-drawn in a single, fluid, expressive brushstroke on a sheet of paper. It is one of the most common subjects in Japanese calligraphy, yet it is said that the character of the artist is fully exposed in how they draw it. It is a spiritual practice in the form of art. The true art of the Enso is not just in the final image, but in the state of being required to create it. The artist must prepare their ink and paper, still their body, and quiet their mind. The Enso is drawn in one fluid motion, in the space of a single exhalation. In that moment, the artist must be fully present. The mind must be free from hesitation, from ambition, from fear of failure. The body, the breath, the mind, and the brush must become one unified expression. There is no thinking. I am now going to draw a perfect circle. There is only the direct, spontaneous, and effortless manifestation of the circle from a place of deep inner stillness. The Zen masters call this state mushin, or no mind. Once the brush touches the paper and the stroke is made, the act is complete. It cannot be corrected. Any wobble, any splash of ink, any variation in the thickness of the line is a permanent and honest record of that one unrepeatable moment of creation. In this way, the drawing of the Enso is a perfect metaphor for a life lived with mindful presence. Each moment of our life is like a single, unrepeatable brushstroke. We cannot go back and erase the past. We can only bring our fullest presence, our clearest intention, to the stroke of this present moment, and then accept the result with grace. This simple circle is pregnant with layers of profound meaning. In its wholeness, the Enso represents the totality of the universe, the great cosmic web of Indra's net. It is all-encompassing, a symbol of completion and perfection. At the same time, the circle encloses a void, a space of emptiness. This represents the core Buddhist insight of shunyata, or emptiness. It reminds us that all forms, all phenomena, are empty of a separate, independent self. The form of the circle itself arises from, and returns to, the emptiness it contains. As the Great Heart Sutra proclaims, form is emptiness, Emptiness is form. The Enso beautifully embodies this non-dualistic reality. For these reasons, the Enso is often used as a symbol of enlightenment itself, representing the mind of a fully awakened being, perfectly whole, serene, spacious, and free. But here we discover the most intimate and healing aspect of the Enso. As we look at the circles drawn by the great Zen masters over the centuries, we notice something remarkable. Many of the most revered and beautiful Enso are not technically perfect. They are not the flawless, geometric circles we could draw with a compass. Sometimes the circle is slightly oblong. Sometimes the ink is thicker in one part than another. And most significantly, many of the most expressive Enso are left with a small opening. The circle is not fully closed. In this beautiful imperfection lies the deepest teaching. This opening is not a mistake. It is a deliberate expression of a profound truth. The opening signifies that enlightenment and life itself is not a static, finished state. It is a dynamic, open, and continuous process. It is never-ending. The opening is an invitation. It allows for movement, for breath, for life. It allows the world to enter into our circle, and it allows us to move from our circle out into the world to engage with it compassionately. The opening symbolizes the Zen aesthetic of wabi-sabi, the art of finding profound beauty in things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is the acceptance of reality as it is, not as we think it should be. The wobbly line, the splash of ink, the unclosed gap, these are not flaws to be lamented. They are the honest and authentic marks of our humanity. They are what make our circle, our life, uniquely ours. This is the great teaching for our healing journey. Our life is the drawing of our own Enso. We are the artist, the breath, the brush, the ink, and the paper. For so long, we have looked at our own circle and seen only its flaws. We have been fixated on the unclosed gap, the place where our circle is not complete. This gap is our old wound, our trauma, our deep sense of lack. We have seen it as a sign of our brokenness, a source of profound shame, something to be hidden from the world. We have spent our lives trying to force that circle closed, trying to create an image of false perfection. But now, with new eyes, we can see that this gap is not a flaw. It is, in fact, the most important part of our circle. It is the place where the light gets in. It is the source of our humility, our empathy, our compassion. It is the very thing that connects us to the imperfect circles of all other beings. Our wound, when seen with the eyes of wisdom, becomes a sacred opening. To embrace this is to understand the Japanese art of kintsugi. Kintsugi, which means to join with gold, is the traditional craft of repairing broken pottery. When a cherished bowl or cup is broken, a kintsugi master does not try to hide the damage. They do not use invisible glue to create an illusion of perfection. Instead, they carefully piece the broken fragments back together, using a special lacquer that is mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. The result is breathtaking. The lines of breakage are not concealed, they are illuminated. The cracks are transformed into intricate, beautiful veins of gold, making the object even more precious, more beautiful, and more resilient than it was before it was broken. The philosophy of kintsugi is a philosophy of healing for the soul. It teaches us that our broken parts, our past traumas, and our old wounds are not things to be ashamed of or hidden away. They are an integral part of our history, our story, our unique beauty. The practice of healing, the act of tending to our wounds with the liquid gold of our mindful, loving, and compassionate awareness, is the art of kintsugi. We are not trying to erase the cracks, we are illuminating them. we are recognizing that it is through these very cracks that our true strength and beauty shine. Our scars tell the story of our resilience, of our capacity to mend, to grow, and to become whole again, not just in spite of our brokenness, but precisely because of it. The mended bowl is a testament to the fact that something can be broken and yet be whole, beautiful, and useful once again. Seeing our life in this way, as a perfect, imperfect enso, mended with the gold of our own awareness, we can finally lay down the struggle. The long and exhausting war with ourselves is over. We no longer need to strive for an imagined, flawless future, nor do we need to lament a flawed and broken past. We can accept the entirety of our life's brushstroke, with its elegant curves and its shaky lines, as a complete and authentic masterpiece. We can embrace the wholeness of our being, the closed parts and the open parts, the darkness and the light. We see that we are not broken things in need of fixing. We are whole beings in the process of healing. With this profound acceptance, a deep and final peace can descend. There is nothing left to fight, nothing left to resist, nothing left to prove. We can simply be here, now, in this complete, whole, beautiful, and unrepeatable moment. We are finally ready to rest. We are ready to come home to ourselves, to lay our heads down without the burden of the past or the anxiety of the future. We are ready to sleep, deeply and peacefully, in the safe, warm, and unconditional embrace of our own compassionate heart. Having seen our life as a perfect, imperfect enso, mended with the liquid gold of our own awareness, we can finally lay down the long and exhausting struggle. The war with ourselves is over. There is no longer a need to strive for an imagined, flawless future, nor to lament a broken and misshapen past. We can, at last, accept the entirety of our life's unique and unrepeatable brushstroke. We can embrace the wholeness of our being, the light and the shadow, the smooth lines and the shaky lines, the closed parts of our circle and the sacred, open spaces. With this profound acceptance, a deep and final peace can descend. We are finally ready to rest. We are ready to come home to ourselves and to learn how to sleep deeply and peacefully in the heart of compassion. Let us, for a moment, gently look back on the path we have walked together on this journey. Do you remember where we began? We started in the dark of a sleepless night, haunted by the invisible anchors of our old wounds. We felt lost on a stormy sea, believing we were the storm itself. From that place of turmoil, we began the gentle inquiry. We learned to see that storm not as our identity, but as a passing weather pattern in the vast, open sky of our awareness. We learned about the two arrows and the profound choice we have in every moment to not add our own suffering to the unavoidable pains of life. We identified the burning hot coal of our clinging and aversion, and we understood that our suffering comes not from the coal itself, but from our own tight, desperate grip. And so, we sought a way to open the hand. We found the simple, ever-present lifeline of the breath, our anchor in the safe harbor of the present moment. Grounded in that stillness, we began to practice the subtle art of letting go, learning to leave the past by the side of the river, like the wise monk. We saw that most of the boats that collide with us are empty, which freed us from the immense burden of taking everything so personally. We learned to see our mind as a garden, and to take up the joyful and responsible role of the gardener, consciously watering the flowers of kindness and choosing not to feed the weeds of resentment. We found a profound consolation in the great law of impermanence, the truth that even our deepest pain, like all things, shall pass. This wisdom opened our hearts, allowing us to embrace our own wounded inner child with the unconditional, loving tenderness of a good mother. We walked with Kisa Gotami from door to door, and in her journey, we discovered that our personal sorrow is a gateway to a deep and unbreakable connection with all of humanity. This led us to question the very nature of the I that suffers, and in looking for it, we found only a flowing, impermanent, and interconnected process. With this insight, we became alchemists, learning the sacred art of transforming the mud of our afflictions into the beautiful lotus of wisdom, and mending the cracks in our being with threads of pure gold. And now, we have arrived here, at the center of our own complete, whole, and beautiful circle. It is crucial to understand that this is not an end point. It is not a final destination where all challenges cease to exist. The 8 worldly winds will still blow. The world will still present moments of pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame. Life, in all its unpredictable fullness, will continue to unfold. But you are different now. You have a sanctuary. You have built a nest of peace behind the roaring waterfall of life. You have the tools, you have the understanding, you have the maps. This is not the end of the path. It is the beginning of learning to walk the path with grace, wisdom, and a balanced heart. It is the beginning of a new way of being. And so now, there is nothing left to do, nothing more to figure out, nothing to strive for or achieve. The only invitation left is to allow yourself to rest, to surrender completely to this moment of peace you have cultivated. If you can, allow yourself to lie down, to feel the support of the earth beneath you. Let your body become heavy and give its full weight to the ground. There is nothing you need to hold up any longer. Let your attention drift gently down to your feet. Offer them a silent thank you for all the places they have carried you on this journey, and invite them to completely let go. Allow this feeling of soft, heavy release to travel up into your legs, letting go of all tension, all holding. Let your hips and your pelvis sink into the ground, releasing the deep-seated tensions held there. Allow your belly to be soft and vulnerable, letting the breath move in and out with perfect ease. Feel your back broadening, spreading out, letting go of all its burdens. Let your shoulders melt away from your ears, releasing the weight of the world you have been carrying. Let your arms become heavy and limp, and allow your hands to be soft and open. Release your neck, your throat, and your jaw. Let the tiny, hard-working muscles around your eyes and across your forehead completely smooth out and let go. Your entire body is now resting. It is safe. It is at peace. Now, imagine a warm, soft, and luminous blanket being gently draped over your entire body. This is a blanket woven from all the loving kindness and compassion you have so patiently cultivated. It is woven from the threads of your own self-acceptance. Feel its gentle weight, a comforting pressure that signals safety and protection. Feel its profound warmth, a loving heat that penetrates deep into your bones, melting away any last remnants of fear or coldness. This is the blanket of your own heart's goodness, and it is holding you now in a perfect, unconditional embrace. Allow your awareness to rest in the space of your mind. See if you can allow your mind to become like a vast, clear, midnight sky, spacious, open, and boundless. Thoughts may still appear, like distant, silent stars, or soft, wispy clouds drifting peacefully across the great expanse. But you no longer need to board them or fight them. You are the sky, not the clouds. They are a part of the beauty, but they cannot disturb your vastness. There is no need to grasp, no need to push away. Simply let them drift, knowing that you are the silent, peaceful space in which all things are allowed to come and go. This feeling of safety, this inner stillness, this spacious awareness, this is your true home. It is not a place you had to build, but a reality you have uncovered. It has been here all along, waiting patiently for you, beneath the noise of the mind and the pain of the past. To rest in this state is to finally come home, so let go now. Let go of all effort. Let the breath breathe you. Let the silence hold you. Let the compassion envelop you. Trust in this process. Trust in your own capacity for peace. You have done enough. You are enough. You can rest. Rest deeply. Rest in peace. Rest in the vast, warm, and loving heart of your own compassion. We have walked a path together, a journey that began in the restless tossing of a wounded spirit and has led us to the quiet stillness of one who has learned to befriend their own pain. It is the journey of shifting our perspective, of learning to see our suffering not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a profound teacher to be understood. Along this path, we have learned the simple, sacred arts of how to breathe through difficulty, how to let go of what no longer serves us, how to forgive others, and, perhaps most challenging of all, how to forgive ourselves. We have learned how to offer ourselves the radical gift of unconditional love. Peace, we have discovered, is not the absence of the storm outside, but the profound quiet that can be found in its very center. It is not a destination we must strive for in some distant, perfect future, but a quality of being that can be cultivated right here, in the heart of this present moment. The old wounds may never disappear completely. Their scars may remain as a testament to the battles we have faced, but they do not have to define us. Instead, they can be integrated, they can be transformed, becoming the very source of our strength and the wellspring of our compassion for others who walk a similar path. You do not need to wait for someone else to come and heal you. You do not need to wait for permission to be whole. All the tools you need, all the wisdom, all the deep, unwavering compassion required for this journey is already present within you. This has been only a reminder, a gentle pointing of the way, a simple map. The path, however, is yours, and yours alone to walk. So please, give yourself permission to rest. Allow yourself to sleep, not just the sleep of the body, but the deep, restorative sleep of a mind that has finally come home to itself.